Hey, before you go any further, Intrepid Editor Evan here, and I want to make sure that you know that this is episode 500, part 2. There's a whole other 2 hours before this, so before you head any further, make sure to listen to that. Okay, with that, Dean, do the thing. Let me stop.
Wait, hey, guess what? Guess what, everybody? We're back. We're back.
Are we?
I mean,
Jesus.
That entire thing has to show up somewhere because they've just been talking.
That's for the Patreon, baby.
Yeah.
Christ, now I gotta edit
but either way,
additional content? Fuck!
We are officially back. And it's time for us to do our top fives because this is episode 500. And we're going to there's 5 of us. We're going to do top 5s for each individual game consoles. But I figured this is a pretty good time as any to mention the secret password. So we're giving away 5 $100 gift cards at StoneAgeGamer.com. There's going to be a link in the show notes. But in order to enter, you need the password. The password is bidet.
That's right, the best thing I've ever bought.
It was the first word that came to my mind when asked if we wanted a password protector. I said, absolutely. It's got to be a password given out on the show. The password is bidet. Go to the website, link to in the show notes, enter the password bidet, and you can enter to win a $100, one of 5 $100 gift cards for StoneAgeGamer.com. There you go. I'll repeat the password again at the end of the show. But now we're going to do our top 5.
Nicely, Ryan might even buy you a bidet.
Yeah, he bought me one.
That's less than $100. I'm just saying, for like $40, the cleanest your
Real
fucking
nice
balloon knot will ever be.
Yep.
Bidets for all.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
bidet for days.
All right, so how do we want to do this? Do we want to just, if someone does a top 5, we'll just go run through a list, discuss as we go, or are we all going to do our like 5s and 4s? We should each do a list. Let's keep our systems
I think each a list,
compact here. So who wants to go first? Man. Do we have any volunteers?
Not me. I'm eating.
I'll go. I can go.
All right, Dean, you did Game Boy, correct?
Yeah, I kind of extended it a little bit because I had stuff that kind of dabbled in between. I did Game Boy Color and Game Boy because it's not the same system, but they were backwards compatible.
They were effectively the same platform.
Yeah.
They're roped together quite often. All right, what do you got? What's your
you were going to say?
Pick?
I extended it a little bit, so I did Game Gear as well. Not
I just did everything that
Saturn,
everything that had game in it. Actually, so we might be here for a little bit. I have about 70 entries.
Made an exception for Watara Supervision.
Yeah, the Okama Game Sphere. Yeah, I really went out of my way to get everything. The first one is kind of 3 games packed into one, and you'll find out quickly why. The first one is Pokemon Heart Gold, not Heart Gold, Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Reason why they're all together is because they're essentially the same game, just you can get different things out of them. I mean, we had the first era. We had Red and Blue, and that's what started it all, right? You know, the first 150, 151 if you count Mew, and it was big. It sent this thing off in so many different directions. We had the trading cards after that. We had the show, and what was next? And next was this game. So not only did Gold and Silver add 100 more Pokemon. We had, I think, 251 after this. You had lots of new features that became staples in future games. You had stuff like day and night cycles, which is amazing to think that was in just the second series of games. You had Pokemon breeding that was added in. What else did you have? Like things we even take for granted, like really small things, like the sprites moving around in the battle scenes. That started here. In the first game, you just had static images, and like they kind of shifted when you attacked each other, or maybe like a little fire icon came out of them. This really was like a huge step forward. Maybe not graphically, but technologically in every other way. This was really a big jump. And not to mention, it was on the Game Boy Color, so it was displayed in color. And it was really cool to see, like, nighttime wasn't exactly nighttime because we didn't have, like, an LED backlit thing for the system. It was displayed through colors. So when you had nighttime, it was displayed through like a purple tone. And then when you had like daytime, it was brighter tones. And it was really cool to see those things as a kid, because I remember playing this as an 11-year-old, and like it was amazing. Like all these new things, not to mention, I didn't get to the best part of it. After you beat the first 8 gyms, you get to go back to the original stomping grounds of Red and Blue and play the original 8 gyms of the game, which I thought was a really neat addition, a nice callback. And honestly, I don't think anything's been done like that since. So this comes in as my I didn't have really any order for these because I love all of these games equally, and I feel like this is just a must-have list, period, for anyone. It's like not up for debate, and there's no number to them. They're just all must have. So yeah, that's my first one. Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal.
Pokemon had to be on that list.
Right.
You're correct. That's an absolute must.
Yeah. And like I said, Red and Blue are great. It did start, I would say more or less a genre, because this is just more than RPGs. It's this, whole collecting thing going on too. But this really was a big step that I think was necessary, because if this wasn't successful, Pokemon could have just be written as a one-off, but it wasn't. This showed that this was, a series that was here to stay. It wasn't just something that couldn't be built upon. They really did go so much more forward with this game.
I concur.
Yep. Okay, I'm gonna keep going then. Seems like everybody else just agrees generally.
Oh,
with that
I mean,
one.
it's Pokemon. Yeah, I mean, even I
Okay.
know that.
All right.
Yes, makes sense.
The second one I had on here was the Mario Golf. I believe it was for Game Boy Color. I'm almost certain. Okay, Game Boy Color. This released like really, really close in tandem with Mario Golf 64, so much so that they actually had some communicability with the game, which I thought was really cool. I could go a little bit more in depth maybe after I talk about the actual Game Boy game a little bit, but instead of focusing on things that like typical golf games did at the time, like was just, versus modes, maybe the courses, or like just even graphics, because most things that, were golf related were on like console. We did have like golf games on, I believe there was a Game Boy golf entry, and there were probably other ones too, but they were pretty simplistic. Mario Golf was like just it's a genre starter. It became the striking point for a whole series of games that people really revere, which is this like partial RPG, partial golf game. And it's really cool to play through. This game, you're not a Mario character, but you're in a Mario world or setting, and you're at a golf club, and you want to get on some sort of pro tour, and you're working your way up from the bottom. So you can kind of see how you can level up and get points and things and get different clubs and whatnot, and just generally like work your way through the game. And it leads for a lot more replayability than just, a simple golf game where, you're going through the courses and whatnot, and maybe you're just doing a couple matches. And if you're not really just anything beyond a golf enthusiast, maybe that's not for you. But with Mario Golf, it took a lot of those mechanics and worked it into something else that was a lot more palatable for just a general audience. And I mean, again, it's just a must-have, because for a portable system, this title goes a really long way.
Nice.
Yeah, Mario Golf is fucking great.
Yeah, it's a really interesting game. Like, and they've kind of been least the audience has really been chasing that game ever since it came out.
Right,
Like,
right.
okay,
And they've never nailed it since. Honestly,
they've never
it's
gone whole hog with it. It's kind of weird.
No matter how bad that the community wants it. And, there were a lot of fun things in the Lost Mario Golf game, and I played a lot of it, like a disgusting amount. But it's at the end of the day, it's just a golf game. There's nothing that much more to it. It did have a little bit more of a story, and you could level up your character, but it wasn't anything like what this game was. And again, honestly, if you've never played this and, you're a kid listening to us, firstly, sorry for the language. You really shouldn't be listening to us. And secondly,
who are your parents?
Damn. Parents are fucking absent, kids. Sorry.
Yeah, seriously. But find this game. Find this game and play it. If you like golf games or you think you might like golf games, this is a perfect game to find out if you do. This is your gateway into more golf games. It's perfect for something like that. Okay, next one. I'm gonna circle back to the one I had next because it's an obvious one. So I'm gonna go to a less obvious one. I want to talk about DK94 for the Game Boy. That game is the bee's knees. Kris turned me on to this game like a while back, and after I played it, it is so fucking cool, especially because the beginning few levels are like a complete red herring, and it opens up into so much more. It's funny because I think this is like the last true, I don't want to say true, but like Donkey Kong arcade style game. I don't think they really made anything after this. And Kris, can you correct me if I'm wrong here?
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. They didn't make any Donkey Kong arcade style games after this?
Well, yeah. I don't remember anything after this that was like too much, or like that was advertised as like, Donkey Kong, really. Because after this, it's mainly, Donkey Kong's Donkey Kong Country after this.
Well, Mario vs. Donkey Kong was a sequel to this.
Right, but that's different, no?
Well, the first one is that's an interesting thing. The first one is very much like Donkey Kong 94, with the minis being this little thing that they added to it that you do occasionally, and then after Mario versus Donkey Kong, the minis became more of the focus, and it kind of evolved from there. But the one that's being remade for Switch is a direct sequel to this Donkey Kong 94 game.
So that's actually
and plays very much like it.
Okay, because I've actually never played that one. Then
you should play that one. It's it's not as good as DK94, I don't think, but it is a very interesting game. It's very cool.
Speaking of which, like DK94 is just a great game. There's a huge amount of levels in this title, and while it's like, again, to me, so what was the gap between DK94 and this? Because there was probably a bigger gap, because didn't the next one release on Game Boy Advanced?
Yes.
Okay,
Mario vs. Donkey Kong was 2004.
Yeah, so that 10 years then?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so big leap between. So this is like, if you were living in the moment, this was the last like actual arcade sort of Donkey Kong game that you were getting on anything that was a portable for a while. And I mean, it was a super memorable game, and like it had a lot of iconic gameplay, and honestly, it just made you realize, like, and even now that arcade games are still fun, and like even in a portable like shelf, they are great. And like, I think it's perfect to take on the road and have pick up and put down gameplay for. So that's why I had DK94 on the list. Is just, I think it's one of those perfect games that you can have on the go and just not invest as much time into as something like Pokemon and Mario Golf that we were just talking about, where you probably need to put maybe an hour or two in each time you play them.
And it was also the showcase for the Super Game Boy, but
that game is great on the Super Game Boy.
That final boss battle is so cool with the giant Donkey Kong. I just finished this one, playing through this one again a couple of weeks ago. It's just a ridiculously good game, and honestly, I feel like that's the one that should have been remade before Mario versus Donkey Kong. But
yeah,
I guess Mario versus Donkey Kong kind of needed it a little bit more. I don't know. Donkey Kong 94 it is a fascinating thing because Donkey Kong Country came out that same year. It came out a few months later, right? If I remember correctly, DK94 was in the summer, and then Country came out in November.
And what would have happened if Country, bombed? Would we just have a different representation of Donkey Kong entirely?
Yeah, because the thing about DK94 is that it doesn't incorporate, with the exception of the necktie, it doesn't really incorporate any of the reinventions of the characters that were then established later that year. So DK Jr.'s thing, Donkey Kong still looks kind of like Donkey Kong. Pauline is... help. It really follows all of that formula, and I love how it remixed. It brought in elements of Donkey Kong Jr. into the game. Yes. It established a lot of the stuff that would have later show up in like Super Mario 64 of how acrobatic Mario was. This was the most acrobatic he had been up to this point, which is a huge difference over the original Donkey Kong, where if he fell at a height higher than his own, then he'd instantly die. I think this one's a masterpiece. Are you doing these in any kind of order, or are you these are just 5?
It's just 5. I think they're all great games, and I think they're all must-haves. So I could not put them in an order. I tried, but I love them all so much.
So you wussed out on us, okay? Because I've been over here struggling. My top 5, put them in order.
No, I'll tell you what. Let me tell you them all, and I'll put them in an order then.
All right.
All right, so the next one is Super Mario Land 2. And I was originally going to go with Super Mario Land, but that game did a lot for the portable. I think Super Mario Land's a great game, but Super Mario Land 2 improved on Super Mario Land every single way. The power-ups were better.
I like Mario Land better, but Mario Land 2 is the better game, no question.
Yeah. I have rose-colored glasses for Super Mario Land. I 100% do, but the detail to Super Mario Land 2, even though it operates slower, or anyway I feel, or maybe at a lower frame rate, there's so much more detail in everything, and I guess it's because the playfield's a little bit more zoomed in that it feels that way, but it just feels so good. I remember playing that now, and it's so tight. The power-ups in that game are in actually both portable games are very unique, but in this one they're far more descriptive and kind of show off a lot more creativity for just game design in general. The last thing to mention about the game is the big boss in it is, I guess it's not, should I say spoilers? It doesn't matter.
I don't think it was in the commercial for the game for crying out loud.
Okay. All right. So the big boss is it's the first appearance of Wario. So it's really, really cool to see the original design for him because it's different. And he's so much. He's a lot bigger, I believe, in this game as the boss fight, right?
Yeah, he's a very big dude.
Yeah, and it's a very memorable boss fight, and all the stuff before that is super memorable. Every single level is themed, and it's themed in such a way that is really cool. All the music's super catchy. It's a really fun game. It has a bunch of mini games for to get power ups and stuff. There's not many better platformers on that system. 100% recommend playing Super Mario Land 2. It's one of my favorites.
So this one felt like a Mario game, other than where Super Mario Land felt like a platformer.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree.
Absolutely loved it.
I mean, yeah, it's obviously it had the benefit of several years of technological advances in learning how to program on the Game Boy, and it was post Super Mario World, and the way that they visually made it more similar to that game was very impressive. I did like all the different worlds. They were such interesting play, the Pumpkin Zone and the Mario Zone, the Macro Zone, they did a lot of really weird creative things with that. And it looks so much more Mario, but I don't know that I agree that it plays so much more Mario. It still has very different physics from any other Mario game. Mario Land, I would say it may be a little bit further removed just because of how kind of janky it was as just a very simplistic game. But all the physics in Super Mario Land 2 are still very different from. Like, he doesn't have the same weight. The spin move is the spin jump is done by pressing down while you're in the air. All the enemies don't move much at all. Like it's everything's just moving very slowly towards you in very, very simplistic patterns. Even pipes work differently, like you go through the pipe and it goes doom doom just twice instead of 3 times like every other Mario game, and then it just scrolls you through to see you coming out the other side most of the time. It's an extraordinary game. I don't disagree with just about anything he said, except maybe the power-ups themselves. Like the power-ups weren't really. You had your star, you had the fireballs. Like, you didn't have fireballs in the first one because programming the Super Ball to just move in straight lines is considerably easier for the Game Boy handheld. But you had Super Balls and fireballs and the bunny ears. But
bunny ears. What was Mario Bunny?
Well, but they were just the raccoon tail minus the ability to attack with them. Like, they didn't do anything different.
Well, but bunnies are better than raccoons.
It was still something cool, and I mean also the idea, like, you had the spaceship level or the submarine level, I think. So I'm kind of counting that stuff too. They were just very creative with how they did things in that game, and they
did, yeah. And in the first Mario Land, where you get the submarine level and the airplane level, like that's awesome.
Yeah. So
great choice.
Yeah, and I just think overall it was a step up in everything from Mario Land 1 to 2. And I love the first one. I remember playing that on my best friend's Game Boy, and I could not get enough of it. I wanted a Game Boy immediately after that because that was the coolest game. That and Tetris, so freaking cool. But so let me get to the last game here before we get too long, because I know we have everyone to go through.
2, correct?
What was that?
It's Bubsy 2.
Yeah, it's definitely Bubsy 2. No, so the last game, which, I mean, I'd be stupid if I left it off, was Legend of Zelda DX. And I mean, it wouldn't have mattered if I picked the original over this one. It's I'm not going to say it's exactly the same game. There were some improvements in DX. They added a dungeon and stuff, so that's why I went with that one. It's in color, so that's great. But it's Legend of Zelda on a portable, and it's awesome. I played this on the Game Boy when it first came out. I played it later when I was a teenager, I don't know, when I was in high school. And then I played it on the Switch not too long ago for the remake, and it's awesome. It's always awesome. It really just all around, for lack, I mean, it just plays to all the Game Boy strengths. It's an awesome game. I mean, no, that's not the only Zelda game on the Game Boy, is it?
If you're including Game Boy Color, no. The Oracle of Ages and Season were on Game Boy Color.
I do think it's still one of the most top tier games on the Game Boy or Game Boy Color for that matter. And I think if you wanted to play a Zelda game, it is up there as a must play Zelda game, especially if you're into kind of going back and seeing all the history and stuff. It's a tentpole title. It's definitely a must play. It's got a really cool story to it. I'm not too sure there's too much to say without getting too in depth into the game, because it's Zelda. It just is. And I mean, at a time where
it's just good.
Well, and it really just is. And when it comes down to it, when you're looking back at it, it comes at a time where, we're looking back at it now and it's oh yeah, I mean, of course it's good because it's fucking Zelda. But back then it wasn't, it's fucking Zelda. It was
Sounds like he's mocking you, Dan.
It was different. Well,
Dean, what was it?
It's fucking Zelda.
It's a Homestar Runner over here.
I've been known to make a Homestar Runner appearance or two. But yeah, it was at a different time where it wasn't a proven thing. Yes, it was popular and it was successful, but it wasn't as successful or established as a franchise as it is now. So it just really drove home all those things. And I mean, there's nothing else I need to say. You need to play that game. That's why it's on the list. So, I mean, obviously, you guys, please say your piece, and then I'll number them.
But yeah.
So I love you, Dean. I do, and I'm drunk now officially. So if I fucking missed it, I'm sorry. Did you just do a Game Boy Color and Game Boy list and not say Tetris in your top 5?
I did.
just want to make sure. Okay,
yeah,
right.
but. It's
okay.
Because, well, I'm going to say there's an honorable mentions, and yes, I'll rattle them off real quick. Tetris DX, Pokemon Trading Card Game, Pokemon Pinball, Mario Picross, and Hatris, just for funsies, are 5 that you should definitely look at because they're also good games. But 5 is 5, and I could keep rattling them off all day. There's so many great games on the Game Boy, but I'm not going to argue with you.
It's your list. It's not. It's your list.
It might be wrong for you,
Dean,
but
Dean, it's your list, but it's wrong.
Yeah.
Your list is wrong. Dean, I'm saying this. Dean,
I'm just saying.
It's your list.
Since I'm a nutball, I also did a top 5 for your guys' categories.
What?
Because why not?
Wow.
And I didn't have Tetris on mine either.
Someone's a go-getter.
How is that fucking possible?
Because Tetris is on so many other things, Dan. You can play Tetris on fucking anything. Why am yes, the one on the Game Boy is great.
It is the Game Boy game.
No, Dan, there's so many other versions now that I could play that are arguably better than that version. I'm not going to play that version when I could play all these other great games that are on there that are definitely more tentpole versions of their games. Yes, Tetris DX is arguably should be on the list, but I had to leave something off, and I left it off. I'm sorry.
All right, Kris, where do you stand on this?
I try not to stand on Game Boy games. I don't want to break them. You're welcome.
Is this a fucking bread scoop situation again?
I think so.
No. I mean, I would personally do Tetris DX over the original Tetris.
Whatever.
I would agree if one had to go on.
So your games were Donkey Kong, Mario Land 2, Pokemon,
Bubsy 2,
Zelda, and what was the 5th one?
Blacks.
Mario Golf.
Mario Golf, yes.
Mario Golf. Honestly, I would probably take Mario Land 2 off of the list to put Tetris DX on there. I do think Mario Land 2 is a great game, but if I'm thinking back to the amount of time I spent on my Game Boy Color in specific, like I spent so much time with Tetris DX. It had that save function where you could just shut it off and it would pick back up when you turn it back on again. Like that would just be my personal pick, though. But like, yeah, it's your list, and I don't disagree with anything that you picked. Like,
no, I respect your opinion because, like, I mean, it's tough. You got to kill one of your children at that point. But I will say I didn't grow up with Tetris DX. I did, however, get on the DS when it came out, that version of Tetris, and that
Tetris
one,
yes, wonderful.
That one I would recommend. Like, that would be on my list for a DS one, 100%.
Yeah, if I made a top 5 on DS, that would probably make that list too.
And like, honestly, that's a top 5 Tetris game. Also is Tetris DX, and they're probably neck and neck right there. But like, as far as a really fun Tetris game, that is 100% like incredible. So yeah, it's just hard. You know, something had to stay on, something had to stay off. And you know, also, okay, all right. I would go number 5 is going to be
wrong.
DK94. Number 4 is going to be Mario Golf. Number 3 is going to be Pokemon. No, it's going to be Super Mario Land 2. Number 2 is going to be Pokemon, and number 1 is going to be Legend of Zelda.
Solid.
Okay.
Yahtzee.
Yeah.
All right.
I did it, guys. Now you guys do it.
All right.
I want to judge
next?
your guys' fucking list. Go ahead. I'll jump in first game.
I'll go next. Man, I'm
not going to judge you. I love you. Go ahead. Go
judge away.
your game.
So my console was arcade cabinets. Now, the reason I chose that is because when I was younger, I didn't play Nintendo till well after it came out, and I was way behind. But when I was growing up, Staten Island, there was this arcade at the mall that I would dump so much goddamn money into. It was ridiculous. So these are my top 5 arcade cabinet games for me, not best ever, because that list is way different. But these are the ones that mean the most to me, that I will only play. A couple of these games are available on console version as well, but I will only play these via cabinet. My first one
is it Ninja Baseball Batman?
No,
5 times.
It is not. It is not.
Fuck.
So my first
Michael Jackson.
The first game that I picked was literally my first arcade video game memory, and it is Burger Time.
Oh shit! Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So good.
I honestly think this was literally the first video game that I played, and it was in a pizzeria, Pal Joey's Pizzeria in Staten Island, and it was the table version, not the stand up. It was like you sat down at it.
Yeah.
And I have, Burger Time. This ain't rocket surgery, okay? You dude, ladders,
Burger Time,
just running over shit. It was just mindless fun, and I've tried to play this game repeatedly via console, and it just doesn't translate for me. Like, I don't feel the same way about it. But anytime I go to an arcade, I will look for these 5, and 9 times out of 10, Burger Time is in that retro arcade, and I will just spend as much time as I possibly can. It's just fun. It's a good time. I don't know very much about like the characters or anything. It's just a cook. You're making burgers with your feet. It's fucking disgusting.
Don't judge Ron Burger Time like that, okay?
But yeah,
Ronald B. Burger.
Ronald B. Burger. There's a restaurant, the town next to mine, called Burger Time, and everything is in like pixelated font, and they have a couple machines. Like it's fucking great.
Isn't that like? See,
their burgers are $20 because fuck you, but it's whatever. It's worth it.
That's the pixelation for you.
Yeah.
There was a florist here called Sonic
Peter
Bloom.
Pepper, by the way. Peter Pepper.
Peter Pepper making the burgers. Yep, that's correct. But yeah, that was my
great choice. I adore Burger Time. It is a phenomenal arcade game. I first played it on NES, and I rather like the NES port. I do. Then I played the arcade game, and it was like, well, yeah, this is the shit right here. And
it's so weird.
It's hard.
It is.
It's so hard. It is a tough game. But like, man, when you actually pull off when you flatten a piece when there's an enemy on it, and the whole thing just goes down and down and down, it's like, oh, it's so rewarding. That game's spectacular.
As I was making this list, I came to realize that I really enjoyed quarter eaters. Like, all of my games that I have chosen are not easy. Like, I don't think I've seen the end of any of them.
So you're a masochist.
I'm pretty sure there isn't an end to Burger Time. If there is, it's one of those kill screens.
If there's a fucking kill screen to Tetris, there's a kill screen to fucking Burger Time. We just need some fucking 14-year-old cunt. Fucking
nothing else to do.
There it is.
All right, Dan.
Is that number 3?
That's a live round there.
All right, so that was number 5.
We've been watching a lot of British TV. I'm sorry. Apologize.
Number 4 for me. Okay. This game I played because it was my first connection to actually seeing a game from a movie. And it was so unique for me because it looked different than everything else in the room, and it is Tron.
Oh, yes. Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Tron,
that is a crazy looking machine.
Right,
the cabinet.
The cabinet is amazing. It was that neon blue, like neon is. It was like clear blue, like everything was transparent blue, and it was.
That's the walk-in one.
No. This was the one that I'm talking about had the joystick with the trigger,
joysticks,
and a turn knob.
Yeah.
Because it had 4 games to play and super simple, all Vectrex style looking shit. And it was, outside of Light Cycle, was pretty much nothing like the movie. But the cabinet looked fucking amazing.
I just want to play Space Paranoids, goddammit. It's not here.
It's a fond memory for me. It was also infuriating that the cone one where you just walked back and forth. Like, it was very, very few things made sense in the game, but it was fun and it was entertaining and it looked great for what it was supposed to be, because it was the effects for the Light Cycle were very similar to the ones that were in the movie, and it just tied it in for me a lot, and I enjoyed the hell out of that game. So that was
another great pick.
Yeah. So okay. Number 3.
I'm terrible at that game, by the way. Absolutely. I'm just shit at Tron. I never got to play it when I was a kid, so I only played it for the first time when I was an adult. And yeah, I'm just fucking awful at that game. I mean, it's cool as hell.
I don't know anybody that's actually good at it, like, top tier Tron player.
Billy Mitchell.
Of course.
Billy Mitchell's the best.
Best at everything.
So good.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were talking about him earlier. He's awesome.
My
Love
next
that guy.
choice may be, I think this is more fondly remembered on console than it is in cabinet, but I don't like it on console. I really, and I'll explain why. The next one is Track and Field. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. No, you're wrong. It's more fondly remembered as an arcade game, as far as I know.
Now, the only connection I have to this outside of cabinet is the pad shit for Nintendo. Like, that, I hated that shit. Way too much.
Totally different game. Not even related. Different company, different everything.
Cool.
That's world class track meet. Track and Field's the arcade game.
Now, this, I don't understand how any of these cabinets survived the 80s. Because
I don't think they did.
All you did was throw a quarter in and beat the ever-living shit out of it. Like, just, that's all it was. There was no, all right, maybe there's slight skill involved, but it was bang the 2 buttons as fast as you can and then hit the third one at the correct time.
That's the skill. That's the skill. It's, how much finesse can you apply to beating the shit out of an arcade machine?
And that was the thing. Like, now going into a barcade, you'll never see this because they don't exist anymore. They are so bruised and battered that, a really good, like down here they have barcades, which it's, like 12 video game machines and a lot of beer. Like, up north,
that's great,
which is fine, but I like going to arcades, and like where did we have your birthday, Kris?
Yestercade. They have a Track and Field machine
because
there.
That is an arcade. You're going there for arcades, and that's the kind of place you'll find this in. I mean, you get your high jump, your hammer throw, the hurdles, javelin. I hated the fucking long jump because I never got it. I always was off. And then the 100-meter dash, which is just beat the shit out of the button. It's just fun. These are good, entertaining, stupid games. It did show up on a bunch of platforms after the fact, but like I said, anytime I tried to play this outside of the console, it just did not work for me.
Evan, have you played Donut Dodo?
No. I was thinking the same thing.
No, I have not.
You need to play Donut Dodo.
Okay.
It's probably, I'm pretty sure it's on PS4. It's got to be. It's like
so.
It's very Burger Time. It takes some cues from Burger Time.
Okay. All right.
It is a modern game that is so perfectly emulates a classic game. It's ridiculous. You got to try it. It's called Donut Dodo. It's only a couple of bucks. You'll love it.
Dognut. You got it. I will check it out. Okay, so my second, or like my fourth pick, but like top 2 for me. Okay, this is my second favorite game in arcade is Arkanoid.
Ooh,
yes.
Okay.
Nice. Yeah.
Yes.
Now, Arkanoid is a phenomenal game because it did Block Breaker better. Okay.
Yeah.
There were a lot of block breakers. There were a couple of block breaker style games before this, but Arkanoid fine-tuned it and did it well. The turn, the what is it? The knob, whatever that is, the rotation knob was
the spinner. Yeah,
it was on a good cabinet, was so sensitive that you could play properly. Like anytime you hit home console, or like if you, God help you try to do it with a D-pad, not working. It doesn't translate. Trying to do it on a touchscreen, like on a phone, just go fuck yourself. Arkanoid just did it perfectly.
It needs the paddle. It needs the spinner.
Yeah.
Which is why when they originally released it on NES, they made a controller just for that game. There was a spinner made specifically for Arkanoid for NES.
Have you ever tried it with a mouse?
No. I've tried block breakers with I have a roller ball on my, like, it just doesn't feel the same.
Yeah, the roller ball doesn't really do it. The mouse actually isn't too bad. In fact, there's a Super Nintendo Arkanoid game, Arkanoid Do It Again, which is phenomenal, and you can play it with the Mario Paint mouse, which is
dope.
It's the second best way to play that besides using a spinner, as far as I'm concerned. It's not as good as. There's nothing like going to the arcade machine, because the thing about the spinner on Arkanoid cabinets is they're so metallic. They have that really almost clunky, like very metal sound to it when you spin those things. Like it's like an industrial.
It felt
spinner,
like there were gears inside the machine. Like that.
Yeah,
it
you play
wasn't
the
just
paddle games on 2600, and it's all plastic, and that thing is metal. It's got weight to it. It's phenomenal. Great pick.
I want to make one of those.
All right, now. My all-time favorite cabinet arcade game it means more to me than just video game. And you'll understand in a second what I mean by that, because if you know me, I am not really a big video game player. But what I am is a comic book guy. Okay? I love me some art.
Can I guess?
Go ahead.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Is it Dragon's Lair?
It's Dragon's Lair, baby.
I knew it.
Love and hate this game with the passion and fire of 1,000 suns. It was such a simple theory, but I have never ever been more frustrated with anything in my entire life. The art is so beautiful and the story is so much fun, but God help you if you were a millisecond off, just frustration, quarter after quarter after quarter after quarter. It was the first time I realized that art translated through multiple mediums. Like, I'd seen cartoons on TV, and it just never clicked that I could be in control. I air quote that. I'm in control of a video game. I'm in control of that artwork. Sort of.
Yeah, kind of.
And it was, it's Don Bluth. It's like some of the best art you'll ever see in any medium. Like, legit.
It's a real eye catcher too. You walk into an arcade, especially back then, nothing else looked like
nothing.
That. There was no game in the arcade that looked anything like that. You could just spot that thing from a mile away, and it didn't matter if the game was good at that point. It was just such an experience to put a quarter in and be like, "Holy crap! I am controlling this." Once you realize you're basically they released that game on DVD, because all it takes is the DVD remote, the actual just your DVD remote to be able to play that game. Like, that's how simple this game is.
But it's so good. It's so pretty.
Basically, it's just navigating the prettiest menu imaginable, but it doesn't matter because it's so beautiful. It's fun.
It was like it was the beginning of QuickTime events for me. Like, it's
accurate
and super unforgiving. You knew right away when you fucked up, because that artwork fucking showed you. You became a skeleton. You disintegrated. And then they, the Space Ace, I think, was the next one.
Yes.
And it was just more of the same for me. Like, I loved that shit. It was more about the look than the gameplay, because if you judged this game solely on its gameplay, no one would ever fucking play it, because it was just that difficult and that unforgiving. But it was very, very pretty. So, There you go. There's my top 5 arcade cabinets for a guy who doesn't play video games. I think I did pretty fucking good.
Pretty
It's not bad. It's not a bad list, Evan.
Appreciate that.
That's an outstanding list, yeah.
There's a distinct lack of Ninja Baseball Batman.
Well, see, like, so
I'll allow it.
there was like those were more modern, like Golden Axe.
Yeah.
Like, I will play the shit out of that. I will play original Mortal Kombat. Like, there are certain games that you go and you like in the arcade, but I've played Golden Axe, Simpsons. I've played all of those more on console, and it's you know what? There was one. It looked like a periscope thing.
Battlezone.
That was another one that I just played every time I found it. I couldn't remember the name of it. But it's
Paperboy's a big one for me because no home conversion of Paperboy can replicate those bike handlebar controllers, you know?
And I will agree with that, but those bike handlebars were like 8 out of 10 times were fucked in any arcade that you went to. They just flopped around. They didn't work right. And I love sit-down racing games. But it's yeah, you fucking double stomp that pedal, it's a racing game. Like, I played that more on console. So there you go.
Yeah, good picks.
Appreciate it.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, we may as well follow it up with our third guest, Mike.
Okay, so my number 5 is Batman the video game.
Mm-hmm.
For NES, we're talking.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay.
All right.
Big Batman strut.
Is that
Such a good fucking game.
that purple Batman?
Yep.
Yeah.
Purple
That
Batman's
purplish
solid.
blue.
Yeah.
Yep.
Batman spelled backwards is Namtab.
Wow.
Why?
The more you know.
Fuck up. What's wrong with you?
So I was going back and forth with what I was going to do. It was between that or Ninja Gaiden. Because, I needed... And so I played way more of Ninja Gaiden, but, I beat Batman way more. And I had a more enjoyable experience. Because there's a lot of shit in Ninja Gaiden that you're like, yo, fuck this bird.
Yeah.
Not as much as that in Batman. You know, it only really gets hard towards, the very tail end of the Batman game.
Batman, less bird fuckery than Ninja Gaiden.
Box quote. Nice.
Okay, so move on to my number 4. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm familiar with it.
I absolutely needed a beat 'em up. I prefer this over Double Dragon, Mighty Final Fight. Wasn't really a lot of, they didn't really, hone in on, I think, the beat 'em up genre until 16-bit.
That's fair.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It was, extremely limited.
Double Dragon's on Atari 2600, but that's not where you should play it.
No, not
But
even
it
close.
should be.
So, my number 3, Kirby's Adventure.
Solid.
The first time you felt like
yes.
Kirby. Because Game Boy, it was just sucking and blowing. That's it.
Very simple game. Well, this was the second Kirby game. It was
That's where he got his abilities.
Such an expansion.
Yeah.
The first Kirby's Dream Land on Game Boy is a tiny, tiny game. It's wonderful. I love it, but it's a very, very quick, short game.
Yeah.
Kirby's Adventure is humongous. It's gorgeous. It does a lot of awesome technical stuff. But that last boss fight against the Nightmare, with all the parallax scrolling and stuff going on, is astounding.
Huge technical feat.
Killer
what was that,
soundtrack, great
1993?
animation. Yeah, it was a later NES game.
So that they were able to put some time into it and realize what their limitations actually were.
really pushed the NES. Amazing game.
I would be so much more into Kirby if one of the games was called Suckin' and Blowin'.
I'd buy that for $1.
Right?
So let's get in the modding community. That's all I'm saying.
It's a lot of money in that now. Just put it onto a cart. Boom.
Dunzo.
Done and done.
Kirby suck and blow.
So my number 2 is the best Mega Man game on the NES, and that would be Mega Man 3.
Yes.
Oh, fuck. I love you so much, Mike, but god damn it, you're wrong.
You could put your Mega Man 2 with all of your extra scooped out bread.
Whoa! Shade being
Mega Man 2 is great, but it's no Mega Man 3.
You're right. It's better. This whole list
You
is
monster.
suspect.
I love you, Mike.
It's Mega Man 2 is too easy. You get Metal Blade, and it's a joke.
I mean, that is actually the most fair argument that I've ever heard. Kris has never articulated it that well. He's always just been like, but Mega Man 3's better because I'm Kris. I'm like, that's not a good argument. It's a fucking terrible argument.
That sounds exactly like Kris.
It's not a terrible argument.
Doesn't
it's an
it?
amazing argument. It's 100% correct. Mega Man 3 is better because I'm me.
Because I'm Doug.
Do it, Doug.
Sodamente Doug.
Solamente Doug.
So I'm going to ask you guys what my number 1 is.
Double Dare.
Fuck Double Dare.
That
Castlevania.
Can I have a fucking sealed copy
Dictionary.
of Double Dare for NES?
Why not?
Evan, you were
Why
correct.
wouldn't you?
I mean, I'm not
Fucking
new here.
Eddie from Joker's Child gave it to me.
Really?
Yeah, he's like, here, I have this game. Like, I don't know why you have this game. Why? Okay, I'm not going to turn down a sealed copy
I'll
of Double
take
Dare
it.
for NES, but like, there it is. It's a thing.
So he had a sealed copy of Double Dare, but the first time he played Mega Man was at your house.
no, I'm pretty
How-
sure that was
how-
Evan.
What?
No, that was Eddie. 100%. I remember you brought out your your Wii and you had the GameCube one, and you're like, "This is gonna feel weird because it's backwards." It was at one of your parties.
Oh wow! I guess that was. I'm pretty sure Evan also played Mega Man for the first time at my house, and he got really angry at it because it's really hard.
Yeah, it is
No,
really
I
hard.
played Mega Man before
The
your house.
bananas. The bananas.
Kris is always whipping out his hard Wii at his parties. It's a fucking childish joke, but I'm not going to let it go.
Still funny. And of course, my number 1 is Castlevania. Not Castlevania 3. It's Castlevania. That is the
Not
best
Simon's
Castlevania game. No, fuck that. I'm excited to play. I'm excited to play the whatever Simon's Quest, whatever. Not Simon's Quest.
Yeah, that looks awesome. That looks great. Adventure of Simon Quest. Oh yeah, well of course it was going to be Castlevania.
How could it not be?
We thought
I was-
nothing
But
but
like I think you and I are somewhat similar in that too, Mike, in where like that Castlevania game, and I don't know, I've talked about it on the show of like not even realizing how much of an impact it had on me until like much later in life. Like, oh, I could trace all of this, like the horror shit I'm into and like horror punk music and like all of this shit. Oh, I could trace all this back to Castle, like not even realizing that this massive influence that this game had.
Yep.
beating that game on stream and like
I remember watching you do that.
yeah, man, that was a lot of fun. That game is challenging, but it's definitely doable. And like honestly, it's a really good time. All the horror elements and stuff. And think about it, it's on the NES. Like this is a very, at the time, it's very powerful, but now it's a fairly antiquated system. But if you look at it, it's still a technical feat. They did a lot with it,
especially given its age.
Yeah,
87.
Castlevania was one of the first games to hit NES that really kind of evolved the medium.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
with like you're talking Castlevania, you're talking Rygar, right around the same time as Zelda, Metroid, and Kid Icarus. Like it was a true pioneer.
I'm sorry, 100%. I agree with everything you said, and I honestly, I mean, there would, if anything else was at the top of your list, like if you said Double Dare, I would have slapped you. I would have had to, but it was
I
always going to be
might
Castlevania.
change it now so you can come back up here and hang out.
I'll be. You know what?
We'll have to talk after the show's over. I should be up soonish. But I guess we should keep moving on in the sake of rolling this
Time
forward, right? Yeah.
All right, I'm going next, Kris, because let's be honest, everybody wants to hear your list last. It's okay.
Let's sort of move on.
No, it's all good. So I had a fucking impossible time. My top 3 were like set in stone because I'm doing PlayStation 1. So my top 3 were set in stone. Like, I think it's very easily predicted if you've listened to this show. But I really, really struggled with 4 and 5. And I didn't finalize the list until about 20 minutes before we recorded, mostly because I just didn't have any more time. And I was like, all right, fuck it. I guess this is just where I'm at. So number 5, top 5 PlayStation 1 games of all time is Resident Evil 2. Resident Evil 2 is such a fucking wonderful, ridiculous, amazing game. The first Resident Evil was super cool, but it's janky as fuck. It's like it just has the worst fucking voice acting. Resident Evil 2 is not much better, but
There's no Jill sandwich.
Yeah, it was just
there's just no Jill sandwich.
sandwiches.
It was such a marked improvement over Resident Evil, and like getting the 2 adventures, it just a fucking mind-blowing game, and such a step forward, and kind of the way that you were talking about Castlevania, Mike, of like this was like, oh, like video games are kind of different. Mm-hmm. I felt that way with Resident Evil 2. Like it just felt like a bigger deal than what video games usually felt like. So number 5, Resident Evil 2. It was almost Neversoft Spider-Man. Honestly, truly, because
that's a good one.
Love that game.
First time actually feeling like Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Like I went back and forth between those two. Just I couldn't really really what made my decision is that my number 4 game is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, and I just didn't want to have 2 Neversoft games back to back. It's really what it came down to. The original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is a game like I have never before or since spent so much time with one level of a video game because oh my God, specifically going to a fucking Pizza Hut. This is New Jersey, and I went to a fucking Pizza Hut on purpose and had to buy food there, which is just anathema for fucking people that live in this state. But just to get the demo of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and fucking play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater in that first competition level over and over and over again. And Jerry was a race car driver, and yes, he fucking was. And he drove so goddamn fast, and I played that game so goddamn much when it came out, and I loved it. And then Tony, and it was like, this is the best fucking video game ever made, let alone the best skateboarding game ever made. This is just about the most fun I've ever had playing a video game. And then Neversoft was like, fucking hold my dick. I will show you exactly what you want. And it's Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. And it was just such a fucking, again, much like Resident Evil 2, just such a leap forward with the addition of the fucking manual, or not the manual, the fuck. I'm drunk. What was it called? The revert, so you could fucking manual off of the tricks and extend your combo. It was just what a fucking game. What a fucking brilliant game.
That shaped so many people's music taste too.
My God.
The Tony Hawk Pro Skater series.
Soundtrack. Yeah.
The soundtrack, it just fucking incredible. Like, just an absolutely mind-blowing fucking game.
Hearing Bad Religion in a game is just a great thing.
Right? Like, that's never a bad time.
Nope.
It's never a bad time. If we, I think for the next Pain in the Ass-a-thon when we do it, we cut, because somebody could do this. I don't know how to fucking do it, but somebody could do it.
Oh, no.
We cut the music out of Bubsy. We put fucking Bad Religion in, and we just fucking roll through Bubsy.
It doesn't make it a better game. No.
I disagree entirely.
Yeah, go ahead. Try it.
Speaking of that, dance number 3 is Bubsy 3D.
100%. How did you know? Because it has a 3 in it, so I figured, fuck it. No. Number 3. And this was like, these 3 were easy. Number 3 is Final Fantasy VII. I've talked about that game a whole bunch over these last 500 episodes about how I feel like there are very, very few games in the history of this medium that were sea change moments in the industry. Like Link to the Past is one of those where it's like, oh, everything that we knew about video, like it's all fucking different now. You know, God of War. It's like, oh, everything's fucking different. Final Fantasy VII, walking through the Deptford Mall in Deptford, New Jersey, because they're bad at naming shit. They're just uncreative.
Is that where that mall is?
Son of a bitch. It's in Cherry Hill. It's weird. Walking through the Deptford Mall, and there was an electronics boutique on the first floor, and they had the GX TV? Is that the one with the fold out speakers?
Yep.
They had the GX TV up at the front of the store with the Final Fantasy VII demo, and playing through that and watching the Leviathan summon for the very first time. It felt so new and adult and just important and big, and it was just this massive thing. And I know there is the argument within the fucking community about whether Final Fantasy 6 or 7 is a better game, and the shit that's going on with the remake and all of that stuff. None of that takes away from the fact of how gigantic of a moment Final Fantasy VII was in terms of graphics, in terms of storytelling, not to mention the fact that this was a Final Fantasy game that was exclusive to something other than Nintendo. It solidified Sony as a player in the. It's just a gigantic fucking moment and a wonderful game. Number 2 is Castlevania Symphony of the Night.
Yeah.
If there, in my opinion, if there is a more perfect game that exists in the world, I don't know what it is. Strange that I wouldn't make it number 1 then.
I was about to say, don't you have, wait.
Yeah, you still have another
you
number.
have another.
I do, but I don't think
exactly what it is, but
of course you do. If anybody's listening to this show, you know what it is.
Definitely not a perfect game, but I understand.
And it's
why you
not a
put it on
perfect
it.
game. Yeah.
It's Ape Escape.
100%. Yeah, obviously, Parappa the Rapper.
Dual Shock.
What is Pad on PS1?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
It's guys. What's wrong with all of you?
God bless
What's
the
wrong
ring.
with you guys? It's guys. That should have been their slogan. They would have sold more. Castlevania Symphony of the Night it's perfect. It's a perfect fucking game. It showed exactly what could have been done had more people not so stupidly and pig-headedly marched into everything's got to be fucking 3D. We have to 3D graphics, even if it looks like shit. We have to do it this way. It's beautiful. The soundtrack is incredible. The fact that when that first fucking time, I don't know that there are many moments in video gaming history, honestly, truly, that compared to that moment of realizing that once you beat Symphony of the Night, you're only halfway done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that.
Cool.
That is such a fucking like, oh shit. Okay. Like just what a fucking moment. That game delivers on, it checks every goddamn box, but it's not number 1 because it's not Metal Gear Solid. and that's just on it. Like, this is my list. And I didn't even.
Wrong. I'm not going to tell you were wrong.
Tell him he's wrong. Tell him he's wrong. Tell him he's wrong. Tell him he's wrong. Somebody tell him he's wrong.
Tell me I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
It's because it's my list. It wasn't even a question that it was going to be Metal Gear Solid, because like Kris just said, Metal Gear Solid is not a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination. There is some wonk and some bullshit and some nonsense, and I don't fucking care, because there is no game that I have ever played where the total is less than the sum of the parts, right? This game, everything comes together in such a way that it's a fucking experience. It's not just a game. That's so fucking cheesy and ham-fisted to say shit like that, and I normally don't. But you're playing through this game, and Psycho Mantis starts reading off your fucking memory card, and if you're like me, that thought didn't even occur to you at first. You're like, oh, I see you like fucking Konami. Like, well, what the fuck?
You like Castlevania, don't you?
You like Castlevania. I do.
You're reckless.
Fuck you. How do you... Oh, my God. Like, and just not even thinking about... Oh, it must just be reading because why would you fucking think that it was reading the memory card? Nothing had ever done shit like that before. There is just nothing in the world that is like Metal Gear Solid. And for that reason alone, it is my number one without question.
Well, you want to talk about games that shifted the conversation about what video games could be.
It was just different.
Final Fantasy VII was one of those watershed moments. Metal Gear Solid was another one of those. It was a massive success because of just how much production value went into the voice acting. Of course, there's voice acting in video games before that, but there was not voice acting like this in games before that. There just wasn't. There was not with that level of care, that level of talent put into making that work. Was unbelievable. And to your point about similar to Final Fantasy, Metal Gear was that was an NES thing here in the United States.
Yeah.
That was so when Metal Gear Solid was a PlayStation exclusive, just like Symphony of the Night, it was like, wow, this is a pretty big hit for Nintendo diehards. But it was the right platform for it. It couldn't have been done on any other platform. There's no other platform utilized the CD-ROM medium quite the way that the PlayStation did. And you've got stuff like playing through Metal Gear Solid. That obviously the Psycho Mantis one was a big one, right? That was a huge moment. I think I figured it out sooner because of Star Tropics. Because Star Tropics was the first game. Star Tropics had that letter that you would dip in the water.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you're talking to Campbell about Meryl, and he says, "Check the back of the box." I'm like, "Check the back of what?" No.
Oh, the back of the game box.
And I pick up the game box, and one of the screenshots, because I'd looked at the back of that box before I worked at the fucking Funko Land when we were selling that game. I had seen the back of that box before, and it never even occurred to me that screenshot was so specifically for that moment in the game. It's like, this is unreasonable. This is fucking nuts. That whole game is just completely insane. And it was before Kojima went so far off the rails that playing the games became this really, really heady experience. Like, there's still some of that in there for sure, but it wasn't quite so far out there.
He wasn't so far up his own ass. Like, make no mistake, I fucking love Kojima. This has been well documented on this show. But there is no dude that is further up his own ass, except for maybe the dude in charge of Team Ninja. What the fuck's that guy's name?
Oh, not anymore. But he's not in charge of that anymore.
But the fucking the sunglasses guy when he was like a thing. I can't remember
sunglasses and the cowboy hat, and he was.
I'm going to throw Tommy Tallarico into this conversation because that dude was.
But even really even that is different, right? And like, I really think with the explosion of Metal Gear Solid, maybe I'm wrong because like we still knew Miyamoto to a point, but I think I would credit Metal Gear Solid with the community at large paying a bigger attention to who the creators were behind these projects, because he became so identified, so intertwined with Metal Gear, right? That we started to know
doing that. He very much made a point of saying, "This is a Hideo Kojima game,"
But that is where it became a thing of like, oh, this is a Yu Sukizaki game. I like that thing, and I know that thing much the same way, and I agree with him entirely, much the same way of like, oh, there's a new Spielberg movie coming out. I'm going to go see it. I don't need to see a trailer. I don't fucking care what it's about. I like what that guy does. And it became... and this is like a personal thing and not to go too far off, but like power to creators and, you know, not corporations and that sort of thing. Kojima is what allowed creators to become bigger than corporations. And I think that also can't be understated when looking at the legacy specifically of this particular title. That is where that shit really fucking started. You know, now Miyamoto happens to be a very company guy, which is totally fine. That is his choice. That's what he wants to represent. But you don't get Igarashi without Kojima and Metal Gear Solid. I think. I don't know.
You don't get Finkel without Einhorn.
You don't get Finkel without Einhorn. It's a really good fucking game. I thought about putting Klax on there too. It's the second Klax reference I made tonight. It's a pretty good game. You should check it out.
No Spyro, no Crash?
No, they're okay. I don't even think they would make the top 10, honestly, because like number 6 would be Spider-Man. For sure. And I can't really think about it too much further than that. It's a great fucking system. I'm pretty happy with my top 5. Fuck, Metal Gear Solid is good.
Yeah, the action figures for Metal Gear Solid, the McFarlane ones.
I have Meryl and Snake over on my video game shelf right now. They're fucking dope.
Before those, were there any like accurate action figures made based off video games, like better than those? I can't really think of it.
So
I don't know if it was before or after. I know there were some Street Fighter ones around that same time that were pretty big, like they were physically larger and very well detailed. I still have the Blanca, but I don't remember. If
your Blanca. I think that was after.
I think that was way after the hyper articulate. Like I have a Guile from that. I can't remember
with like the ball joint movement, right?
Yeah, but I think that was way after McFarlane stuff. I'm sure there were probably. I don't know if like Kotobayuki or any of the other like bigger Japanese toy companies were doing video game figures or statues, even like SH Figure Arts or any of those. I don't even know if they existed back then, honestly, because I mean we're talking a long fucking time ago, and up until that point, like you didn't really get that kind of hyper detailed thing because that's not what video games were.
Yeah,
video games were Mario. You know, like, and you don't do a hyper detailed, articulated looking Mario, or at least certainly not back then.
I think McFarlane should do Mario figures.
I'd be into it. I'd buy one.
I'd buy that for $1.
The fucking Ashley Wood comics after that were fucking crazy. Like, it's just so good.
Very good list. I mean. There's definitely games. I don't know that these games would have beaten the ones on your list, but I mean, I'm thinking back to the stuff that I played on PlayStation 1. They definitely would have topped Spyro and Crash for me personally, but like Street Fighter Alpha 3.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Soul Blade. God, Soul Blade was so good.
I like Soul Blade, but not on a PlayStation. Like on the PlayStation list, Street Fighter Alpha 3 and Tekken 3 would be way above Soul Blade.
Soul
Blade's good.
I personally like Soul Blade better than Tekken, but that's just a me thing.
Yeah.
What was
it's not so like Soul Calibur on Dreamcast. Like if I want to play,
right.
You know, if I want to play a Tekken game, I would go back to Tekken 3. I would go back to Street Fighter Alpha 3 on PlayStation. If I'm going to play Soul whatever, I'm going back to Soul Calibur on Dreamcast or Soul Calibur 2 on GameCube. You know,
Soul Reaver would also be pretty high on my list. Not the first Legacy came, but the first Soul Reaver on PS1 is outstanding. Obviously, Contra Legacy of War.
Just do that 5 times
with the 3D glasses.
Tomb Raider, like
Tomb
for
Raider.
as shitty as that game looks now, and is problematic in this over sexualization of characters and all of those things. The impact of what Tomb Raider was and did is just, it's huge. Like the PlayStation list is very, very. I'm really happy that we decided to like cut it down to 5. Because I was like, fuck, I don't know how I'd do a bigger list. It's just these 5. Because you just get so in the fucking weeds at that point. Like, where do you put Blasto? A Blasto's got to be in there somewhere. You know,
It's tough.
Gex, Gex almost made my list.
Gex, fucking Vagrant Story, Legend of Dragoon. Like, the PlayStation is such an incredible system.
Wild Arms.
I love that
Wild
Frogger.
Arms, so good.
Oh, dude,
Frogger's
Frogger.
really fucking good.
Frogger and
Like-
Cubert. I friggin' love those games on PlayStation 1. They're honestly
would
the ones I go back to like more than anything.
They're so good. I would probably put Siphon Filter in my top 10. I think that game's fucking incredible. Man, yeah. All right, I'll shut up. Chris,
Okay, all right.
what do you got?
This was tough because everything seems so obvious, and then it was like, all right, well, what order do I put them in, and which ones do I cut out? Right? I have 7 games that were just absolutely unavoidably.
I have
needed to
7
be on
games
this
in my top 5.
list. So I had to cut. Deciding the 2 that I had to cut were just killers for me. So all right, this is the order that I landed on. It is very difficult for me to put these in this order, but this is the order that I landed on. Number 5 is Chrono Trigger. Because
You're doing
Chrono Trigger's-
for Super Nintendo.
right, I'm doing Super Nintendo. Yeah, forgot to say.
Chrono Trigger's
Yeah,
your
Super
fifth?
NES. Chrono Trigger is number 5. Chrono Trigger is one of the best games I've ever played in my life. It is a masterpiece. It's gorgeous. I love the writing. I love the battle system. I love the story. I love the character designs. I love the monster designs. The soundtrack is unreasonable. Chrono Trigger is just a friggin' masterpiece. I always struggled with turn-based RPGs. Chrono Trigger was the first one that made me understand them. And once I did, then I was able to go back and play things like Final Fantasy III, and be able to appreciate them for what they were and understanding a turn-based battle system. Chrono Trigger is just it's such an exceptional game in every single respect. It's as fun to play today as it was back when it originally launched. Nothing has topped it. The closest I think anything's ever come to recapturing that magic was last year's Sea of Stars. Chrono Trigger is it's just all time. It's so goddamn good.
Yeah, it's a dope game. Absolutely.
Is that the most creative that Akira Toriyama has been?
Oh, I don't know. He's done some pretty wacky shit in the Dragon Quest series, but I don't like that series all that much, so I can't say for sure. But I feel like Toriyama's character design work probably goes the hardest in the Dragon Quest series because he's been at it for that series for such a long time. But he's come up with some really great. He came up with some great designs for Chrono Trigger, even if Chrono is basically Goku.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, there's not. Yeah,
Marl is Bulma.
Well, we were walking through the store today. Sorry, this just threw me off. The fucking Reese's Puff cereal has Goku on it.
Oh yeah,
I don't fucking know why.
Yeah,
That's
limited
weird.
time.
Why?
I don't think he'd eat that. And
you don't
Goku would eat almost
Reese's Puffs
anything.
and Goku go hand in hand? They both are orange. The
They're
box
both
is
orange, yeah.
No, that totally makes sense.
Yeah, that tracks.
It was between
All right.
Golden Graham s'mores and Reese's Puffs with Goku. I mean, how do you make that decision? Anyway, sorry.
All right. Number 4. This was another... Oh, God, this game is so good. Number 4 is Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island.
Oh, yeah.
When I think back to the Super NES, there's obviously a lot of games come to mind of just like unbelievably amazing things. Yoshi's Island was such a strange turn for it's a weird sequel to Super Mario World, and it kind of isn't. I think pretty sure calling it Super Mario World 2 was all marketing. But nothing looks like this game. Nothing at all looks like this game. It has such a unique look. games have tried to emulate this thing's look, including sequels to Yoshi's Island have tried to emulate this look of the handcrafted, hand-drawn, crayons and markers in the background look. But nothing quite hit it just as well as Yoshi's Island did. The animations were unbelievable, and the incorporation of the polygonal effects with the FX chip, like the walls that would fall down at you, the strange gelatinous cube, all the bosses being enormous, the Raphael the Raven boss fight, the final boss fight against baby Bowser, where he's this giant Godzilla in the background, you're throwing eggs. It is such a game. It is one of the few games that you can tell was just made with such an unbelievable amount of love, not just because it's obvious, but also because there's a friggin' message about it in the game. There's a hidden room that you get to, and there's one of those little talkie blocks, and it's just a message from the creators being like, we poured our hearts and souls into making this game. We hope you like it because this means everything to us. And you can just see that. I remember seeing the box art for it and that big blue creature, the Nepa Nut, and then you see it in the game and it looks just like it. And it's moving unbelievably smoothly, right? Because you've seen games with larger than life sprites before, or big creatures moving around, but never like this. It was such a technological masterpiece. The music was sensational. One of the things that sticks out to me too about this one, something that's really hard to be impressive with, in my humble opinion, is cave levels. I feel like cave levels have always bored me in games, even when they're good games otherwise. Like the cave levels visually never really excite me. Caves in Yoshi's Island look amazing. Everything about this game looks and sounds amazing. I just love it. It's such a tightly designed game. There's no level in the game it's like, well, this is just a bunch of bullshit. Even the weird transformations, like morphing into a helicopter or a mole tank or whatever the hell that thing is. Like, it's just pure Nintendo creativity, top to bottom, and it's simply a masterpiece.
Yeah, I mean, like, is this what started, like, I don't want to say, like, the cutesy genre, but, like, they've had, like, Kirby's Epic Yarn and stuff, and I feel
it looked like it was made out of crafting supplies. As far as I know, I've never seen anything before it that looked like this. Yeah,
it's a really cool look, and you're right, the people that developed it really put love into this and played to, and then the Super Nintendo strengths, and it shows. And of course it did. It's Nintendo, of course, the company that made the system is going to know its hardware the best.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's incredible. I don't like Mario games, and it's fucking great.
Even the obnoxious baby Mario crying is like, well, you know what? It fucking works. It's a really good motivator to not take damage.
Yep. It really is. Really fucking is.
All right. These last three, I swear are just neck and neck. Like, they're basically tied for first. But I had to put them in some sort of order, and it killed me to do it. So, number 3 would be The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past.
Oh. Yeah.
There's a ton of video game moments that I've had in my life where I've just been so completely floored, and easily in the top 3 moments of my entire life playing video games that have floored me is walking outside of the house at the very beginning of the game and seeing the rain. Oh. The thunderstorm, the raindrops hitting everything as you're walking around. And another one of those is just when you start up the game. The 3D Triforce comes in and forms in the center, and the sword slashes down, and the music... it's unreal. But
good.
This game... Playing through this game, my first time through it, and just being so unbelievably floored by how it took the best of the previous 2 games, and just like it gave you that top view perspective, but it didn't completely ignore everything that came out in Zelda 2. Like, combat was more involved. There was a magic system. Like, it was just unbelievable. And playing through this game, and you get to go after the 3rd pendant, and you step into the Dark World for a minute, look around on the map and be like, wow, that's wild. I wonder if I'll ever get to come back here again. Like, this is really interesting. You pull the Master Sword, which is just an unbelievably amazing feeling pulling that Master Sword, the way the cinematic goes and the lights coming out of the pedestal you pull it out of, the mist that covers the Lost Woods dissipates, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh no, Zelda's in danger, come back to the sanctuary. You rush back over there and the priest guy is knocked out and or dead or whatever is happening because he disappears because it's an old 16-bit video game. But then you go and you fight Aghanim, and I'm like, holy shit, this game's ending sooner than I expected. But hey, this is really, really awesome. And then it stops, and you're not even a third of the way through the game yet. You get pulled into the dark world with the single greatest visual effect I've ever seen in a video game, where everything just swooshes back and forth, and you get sucked into the dark world, and you're standing on top of this pyramid, and it's like, all right, you've got a whole lot of game left. Good fucking luck. And this is where whereas the game was already a masterpiece up to this point, now you've got this game where you're traveling back and forth between the light and the dark world to figure out puzzles between multiple dimensions, which is something Nintendo Nintendo has gone back to over and over again, and they had already mastered it with their first freaking attempt. Like, unfucking believable. And then all the lore that got added on top of it, because Zelda is one of those few series at this point that was really that had such an interesting degree of lore. You can obviously look back on the Atari stuff with Sword Quest, but the games themselves didn't feature the lore inside of them. It was like the comic books that were attached to it. This had the first Legend of Zelda had that little bit of a story in the beginning, but then the manual had this beautifully illustrated, like, long story inside of it. And then Zelda 2 took that even further. But in this game, you get to go to Kakariko Village and talk to all these different people, and every maiden you save is telling you about the history of Hyrule, the history of the Triforce, and Ganondorf Dragmire, like, oh, he has a full name? What the hell is that about? Why does he look like a pig? Oh, because there's a reason why he looks the way that he's not just this monster. They added so much to it. And to get that ending of first the totally kick-ass battle with Ganon, which is amazing, and then to get the ending where they go through and show you what happened to all the characters you met throughout the course of the game. The little kid who gave you the bug catching net, he got better, like all these little things. It just wraps up into such a perfect package. It doesn't even have a large soundtrack. It just has every single song is a direct hit. When you finish up that first portion of the game and you walk outside and it's no longer raining, and that Legend of Zelda theme from the first game kicks in with the trumpets. You never heard anything sound this good before. It was unreasonable. It's a 10 out of 10 game. It's fucking phenomenal. And I couldn't make a top 5 list without it being there. It was just a matter of where to put it.
I'm just surprised it's number 3.
I can't believe it. Yeah, I can't believe it's number 3.
I can't either.
I
But
fully understand.
like I said, these 3 games are basically tied. They're basically tied. Which puts my number 2 at one of my favorite games of all time, Super Mario World. Super Mario Brothers 3 was a life-changing experience for nerds like myself, especially seeing it in the movie theater with the wizard. And I'm currently working on a Mario retrospective series for the Stone Age Gamer YouTube's channel, and it's really, really fascinating to me how different the trajectory was for Mario games here in America as opposed to Japan, because we viewed Mario 3 under such a different set of circumstances than Japan did, because Japan got their Super Mario Brothers 2, which was basically Super Mario Brothers 1.5, and then they got Super Mario Brothers 3. Right? And what we got, Super Mario Brothers 2, that was our reskin version of Doki Doki Panic, which was actually shows an evolutionary path between Super Mario Brothers to Super Mario Brothers 2 to Super Mario Brothers 3, because Super Mario 3 incorporated holding items and carrying them around and using them to throw at enemies, and incorporated multi-tiered environments that you can jump from one through the floor onto the next one. And it also incorporated being able to move the screen vertically as well as horizontally, and moving backwards and forwards, which is all stuff that happened from our perspective first in Super Mario Brothers 2, where in Japan, that stuff happened first in Mario 3, because they didn't get our Super Mario Brothers 2 until after Mario 3. Well, I mean, they technically did, but it wasn't a Mario game. So as as a kid, as somebody who was just lived and breathed Nintendo, with Mario being like just the coolest darn thing in the world besides Zelda, when the Super Nintendo was happening, and Sega is coming out with the Sonic the Hedgehog, and it looks amazing and everything. Super Nintendo hits, and Mario's got a superhero style cape that comes from a feather for some damn reason.
Because Nintendo.
There's this commercial for this game that sums up everything about this game to me so perfectly, where it's suddenly the jumps are harder, the graphics cooler, the sound is hotter, and it just going through all these different things, but it's like building and building and building. This was such an incredible revelation, not just because it was... If you've ever read the book Console Wars, which is a fantastic book, Sega's impression of Super Mario World was that they just did Super Mario Bros. 3 with more colors. They just did Super Mario Bros. 3 and better graphics, but that's not what this game is. What makes Super Mario World so special, and the game that I go back to in the Mario series more than any other game, is that it added an exploratory element that they almost kind of sniffed at in Mario 3, but Mario World was like, here's this giant stage, and you can play it just like a Mario game. Here's the beginning, and there's the end, and congratulations. And that's where the beginning of the game more or less is, right? You start on Yoshi's Island, and every stage has a beginning, middle, and end. But then once you get into the donut plains, levels suddenly have multiple exits. Right, there's secret switch palaces hidden all over the place that you have to find a secret exit in a stage to get to, which means the stages have branching paths built within them. They have keys with keyholes, and you got to figure out how to get those keys to the keyholes. They've incorporated puzzle and exploration elements into this Mario game that already looks and sounds so freaking good, especially considering it's the first damn game made for the system. It is such an in-depth game with secrets that took me years to figure out. It took me years to find the stage with Torpedo Ted in it, because that was the Butterbridge stage, which was just... You already had a secondary bridge in that area where you had to go through a whole secret set of stages that you go through the Vanilla Dome to get to. And then I remember finishing the game, and they go through the cast of all the bad guys that are in it, and I kept seeing Torpedo Ted. Like, where the hell is this? What is this monster? I've never seen it before besides the ending. It's got to be in the game somewhere. And then eventually there's that bridge stage, and you go underneath the exit to find a secret exit behind the exit that you have to surpass the way the game automatically triggers the ending of the level to get to, and it makes a vine show up that brings you into a secret stage in the water that brings you all the way back out to Star Road. And then Star Road was its own special set of secret levels on top of the secret levels, and then there was Special World on top of the fucking Star World, which was crazy cool, because one day I was playing the game and I stopped on a level and I walked downstairs to get a drink of water, and I came back up and the music had magically changed to the Super Mario 1 theme. Super Mario World is unfucking believably tightly designed, which is crazy to think about, because Miyamoto considered the game unfinished when he finally put it out there into the world, which is completely blows my mind. Like, I look at that game as almost near gaming perfection. It's so meticulously well done, and to think that he would look at it and be like, yeah, there's just so much shit I didn't do in that game is mind-boggling. It is so difficult to put this game above A Link to the Past, but it's kind of where my heart is right now. But when I say it is above, it is by like the smidgiest of smidge. Like a micron is like a half of an atom above A Link to the Past as far as like how many times do I go back to it. Like, that's where this game is.
So what I'm hearing is you hate the other one.
Mm-hmm.
I do.
The worst.
The past is straight garbage.
Hot, steamy pile of shit. Got it. Go.
Thoughts on Mario World?
We can't say anything else. You said everything. Literally
everything
about Mario World. It's a great game.
Okay. It's okay. It's fine. Fine.
Everything's fine.
All right.
Well, I think the one thing, like, if you look at the progression from one to World, it's just such a massive jump forward while still being relatively the same thing. Like it's an incredible fucking achievement. And it really did, I think, kind of like what you said too, of like kind of redefined and retaught, like how crazy special is it that Miyamoto gets to be the guy who taught a generation of people how to play video games with the very first stage in his first massive successful game in Super Mario Brothers, and got to kind of do the same thing again for a whole new generation. It speaks to the level of talent and care and love that is evident in those projects, and it's just pretty fucking incredible.
Yeah, it's an amazing game, and I love it with all of my heart. But the number one has to be Super Metroid, because I don't think there's a single game on that platform that has blown me away more than Super Metroid. I loved Metroid, the original Metroid on NES. It fascinated me as a kid, and I didn't have my own copy for the longest time. I would borrow it from my neighbor Steve and just try to get as far as I could. The only way I had ever beaten it when I was younger, when I was actually like really young, was with the Justin Bailey code, because that's the only time the only way I had the time to do it. And then eventually I got my own copy when I was a teenager, and I got a copy of Metroid for NES and some graph paper, and I mapped out the whole goddamn game as I was playing it, and that's how I figured it out and finally beat the game legit. And I always loved the whole idea of it. I was surprised that Samus was a woman. I loved the galactic setting. I love Samus's design. It was just such an incredibly awesome looking character. I loved the world of Zebes. I loved the monsters, Kraid and Ridley and Mother Brain. I just thought it was the coolest damn thing. And then the escape sequence, amazing. Metroid 2 comes out for Game Boy. I lost my damn mind again. I didn't even have a Game Boy yet at that point. I was playing, I think, I want to say it was my friend Greg who I was able to play Metroid 2 with. I really don't even remember. I just remember going through that game and also being just like dumbfounded by it. And again, with the narrative of you get to the end of the game and there's the baby Metroid, and somehow this no colored Game Boy game conveys exactly what's happening. Like, oh, it thinks I'm its mother. Like, it's just floating around and it's not hurting me. It's weird and it's awesome. And hooray, I saved the baby Metroid, and that's the end of the game. But the first time I ever saw Super Metroid was I had gone to the local CVS, and whenever my mom went to the CVS, I would run over to the magazine section, and I picked up a copy of Game Fan, and on the cover was the first screenshot of Super Metroid with the caption, "How does Nintendo make games this good?" And I was like, I'm sorry, there's a Metroid 3? What the So I'm freaking out about this game. I cannot wait to get it. And I went over to the Electronics Boutique in the Hamilton Mall because I wanted to pre-order the game. Because pre-orders on video games weren't that big a deal back when this was coming out, right? This is the old days. But I knew that it was an option, so I went over there to pre-order it, and they had actually gotten the game in early. They couldn't sell it yet, but they had the game in. And the guy who was working there, Wes, he let me try it out. He let me try the beginning of the game. And I just walked around for like maybe 15, 20 seconds as Samus in the rain. And I was, because he had already had it running. And he said, "You want to try it out?" And so I did. And I just, right there in that first opening segment where Samus is in the rain on the criteria, just ran around, and I saw the water come off of her feet, like on her footsteps. And I just stopped. I was like, I can't anymore. I don't want to see any more of this until I can.
It's too much. It's too much, man.
I'm just going to die right here in the store. I just take my money. The game comes out, and I turn it on, and the voice, "The last Metroid is in captivity, the galaxy is at peace." I am a huge sucker for continuity. I love it when things don't forget where they came from, when they acknowledge what came before them, because it's not always the case. Sometimes, especially in video games, you get these situations where like, well, that sequel didn't really count. This one was just 100%. Here's the ending to Metroid in 16-bit. Here's the ending to Metroid 2 with 16-bit visuals. And I'm just watching this intro sequence, reading the wall of text of Samus explaining where she was in the first game, what happened in the second game, and then what happened next. After she left SR-388 with the baby Metroid, went to the science station, they found out that Metroids could actually have been created with a good purpose in mind. Like they were energy creators or something. They were studying them and trying to figure out how they could be used for the benefit of all mankind. And then the music stops cold with Sarah Station was under attack. And then it looks like a fucking movie with the ship flying back down to Sarah Station. And the whole thing is so creepy with the computer sounds. And then fucking Ridley shows up. Now, don't get me wrong. Ridley's on the front of the box, but I wasn't sure that was him because he's bright red, which he never was in the game. But as soon as he showed up in the game, that little eye shows up. And then there he is, enormous purple dragon Ridley, and that fucking music starts playing, and it was just that was it. It was all over for me at that point. I was never been that all in. And as much as I loved A Link to the Past and everything that I had talked about before on this list, I cannot think of a single time where I was so all in when Ridley showed up. And then you beat him and the escape sequence starts, and like that's all really cool, and the tiles are falling down to the ceiling, and every screen you go to things are getting worse. But then the last screen, when you're working your way up to the top of that shaft and the entire screen shifts off to the side, like the entire station is just falling to shit around you, I was like, oh my god, I gotta get out of here. You get to Planet Zebes, you're reliving the end of, like, this is, you set off a huge fucking bomb at the end of Metroid, and they take that into consideration. The whole place is destroyed when you find your way back to where the game ended and Mother Brain's corpse, and the whole game just kind of goes from there. It continues to build with these amazing new skills, and everything you learned in Metroid 2 is now completely expanded upon. And you're running around these crazy looking new areas, and the music is unbelievable. And then the ending, the entire ending of this game is it's gut wrenching. That final fight with Mother Brain, you get to that last room and it's like kind of like a repeat of the first game, only a lot harder, except when you blow it up, then Mother Brain gets this huge, hideous body, and she's shooting that unreasonably powerful laser at you, and then the baby Metroid shows up and sucks the life out of her, and then she kills it with that horrible sound. That sound of that Metroid dying just rips my heart in half every single time. But then you get sweet retribution because you get the fucking hyper laser and you just blow her head off, just disintegrate Mother Brain to nothing, and then you blow up the whole goddamn planet. That's the end of the game. It is not just a complete and total fucking masterpiece. This was the game that started the speed run, right? You could do sequence breaking in Metroid for NES, but that didn't become a thing, like a real thing, until Super Metroid. That was the game that introduced, like, how fast can I do this? That really, really made that a mainstream possibility. Super Metroid is, obviously, there were games before Super Metroid that were what we would call Metroidvanias now, but Super Metroid was where the formula was first truly perfected. It is utterly fantastic. I know that more modern Metroid games control, quote unquote, better. I've never had a problem with the floaty controls of the original Super Metroid. I still think the game controls like a dream. It looks unreasonably good for a Super Nintendo game. It's one of the best looking games on the platform, which is definitely saying something because that system was capable of some truly impressive graphics, but it holds up so goddamn well. It is just a transcendent piece of work right there. I cannot say enough good things about it. Mario World and Zelda: Link to the Past are so close to one another, but if I really, really think about what's the best game on the system, there was no question it had to be Super Metroid at the top, in my humble opinion.
It is offensive how good that game is.
Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, that's
it. Really, like, fuck you. Don't make shit like that. Don't do that.
It's like the magazine said, how does Nintendo make games this good? And then you finish that game like, fuck, how did they do this?
I mean, like, no hate to Metroid Prime or anything, but I personally, that's the high point in the series for me is Super Metroid.
Same with me. They've come close to topping it. They've made masterpieces since Super Metroid, but it's just one of those things that's hard to top, you know?
I'm I'm gonna make a very unpopular opinion, but I played Metroid Prime, the remaster. I fucking hate that game. It was not fun to play for me. It was not. I don't know what the hell.
Dean's
I don't
dropping the bombs today. Silent Hill
really
2
is
garbage. Metroid.
I know.
Prime.
I'm still waiting for the racist take to come out though. Like something slightly
Because Samus is a
vaguely
woman, right? That was
racist.
it.
Well, I played through Metroid and all of a sudden they're telling me I got tits. Fuck you. Bullshit.
It's something about the it just didn't do it for me. Like I streamed it and like I got to the end. I got all the way to the end and it just did not do it for me. But you know,
I'm with you on that, Dean.
Yeah, Super Metroid I thought was fucking amazing, and I agree with you in every sense of the word that it is 100% the game you're saying. And Mike, I'm
We
happy
streamed that one together. That was fun.
Yeah,
that was fun playing through
great.
that on NSO. That was a
Oh
blast.
yeah, it was. Yeah, and I don't know. I know it's an unpopular opinion with Prime. I'm glad someone here agrees with me, but yeah, it didn't do it for me. But yeah, you have a great list, Kris. That is incredible. I would have liked to have seen Mega Man X on there, but I
That
understand.
was one of the two. That was
I get
the
it.
two that missed the list: Mega Man X and Donkey Kong Country.
Oh, I mean,
Those are on my list.
Yeah.
So, but like,
How
I'm just
could I-
surprised you have
what could I
two Mario
possibly
games.
What could I possibly put those games over? You know, like I couldn't.
It's
There's
personal
one
choice at that
Like
point.
it's like is Mega Man X better than Chrono Trigger? I don't know. It's so good. It's a fucking masterpiece. Mega Man X and Donkey Kong Country are so good and absolutely deserve to be on this list. It's just with only 5 slots,
would've
what do I do?
I would have put Donkey Kong Country where you put Yoshi's Island.
I don't.
I
pushed
thought about
Yoshi's
that
Island
quite
too.
a bit.
Yeah.
I thought about that a lot, except Donkey Kong Country's later stages, I feel, fall apart
Yeah.
a bit more than Yoshi's Island. Yoshi's Island is tight all the way through to the end. Donkey Kong
You're not
Country's
wrong.
last world is a little weak, where you're doing
I
like
just
all
like
the
it better.
Yeah, I get it. I fucking adore Donkey Kong Country, but that last world that's like a lot of like, you know, you're on the tracks in the cave. It's you're not seeing anything new. Like there's no, you've already seen everything that the game has
It's
to offer at this
annoying
point,
at
except
that
Gangplank
point.
Galleon. It's just like, all right, if this stage is going to be this annoying, there should be some sort of something visually exciting happening at this point, and there just wasn't, which is it's the only place that game trips up, honestly. And in my opinion, that is literally the only place that game trips up, is that last world not being something more jaw-dropping, because everything up to that point was just like the fucking factory, the forest, the jungle, the ocean, the snow. Unbelievable. Just every single turn, something new is coming at you with some sort of new visual trick. The snow levels where you go in Snow Barrel Blast and the game ends during a blizzard. The next stage is inside the ice cave, which is probably one of my favorite levels ever. And then the next level, the blizzard is stopping. You come out the other end of the fucking cave in the third level, and as you go through the stage, the snow stops. It's like, this is unreal, the level of detail you put into this. It's such a good game. And Mega Man X, fuck. They
Real good.
after 5 iterations of Mega Man, right? Because I believe X came out before 6. 5 solid iterations of Mega Man, basically doing the same thing over and over again. We finally get a real evolution of Mega Man with the incorporation of the wall jump, the intro stage, right? That became a thing for Mega Man games going forward. That unfathomably good soundtrack, like.
No
What?
right being that good.
No, right. That's, you want to talk about offensively good. You think the highway stage and Mega Man X, Spark Mandrill stage, there's
whole
so
thing,
much
through
good
and
music. There's
Whole
so
thing.
much good music. And the weapon choices were interesting.
Yeah,
the armor upgrades, like,
Boss design.
and it looks, it looks amazing. It
Yeah.
looks so good. It animates so well. It's a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah.
And it killed me to not have it on my top 5.
I get that. You know, you got to
suck.
keep some things off. I get it.
Mega Man 6 came out a month before
Oh, shit.
Mega Man X, I believe.
Okay.
But I'm just surprised Mega Man X didn't make it. Only because there's, air quotes, 2 Mario games on here. I know very different, but...
I think, well, they are very different. I think that's the biggest thing is that, I mean, even design-wise, control-wise, they do 2 very different things, you know, and even down to the core gameplay, you know, I guess...
Yoshi's Island is not a sequel to Super Mario World. It's just not. It's a totally different animal.
It's
well,
a different...
Nintendo thinks otherwise. They're wrong, though, but...
They're wrong.
They are.
Well, it's like Super Mario Land 3, Wario Land. Like,
Yeah, exactly. That's not Super Mario Land 3. That's a marketing ploy. They wanted to call it something that was recognizable other than Yoshi's Island. And I get it. It's ridiculous, but I get it. Yeah, it was difficult to place that there. Because it could change. It could change tomorrow.
Yeah, this is true.
These 7 games, I could change this. I could shuffle this order tomorrow and feel just as strongly about it.
Yeah, my top 5 changed since you told me about this. It changed every other day.
Yeah, it's just there's too many good games on this platform. All right, it's 12:30 and we still haven't listened to any of our listener mail. So
is Evan even awake? Evan, are you awake?
Yeah.
all right, we've got a couple here that are written. So let me get these done first. This one actually came in under the wire. I was typing to Chronodin on the Discord while we were recording. He said, I missed my opportunity. I was like, well, we're still going, so go ahead and write one. So I'm, again, reading this for the first time. It says, I was hoping to have more time for these write-ups, but my idea was top 5 games made better with Kris and Dan mods.
See?
Okay.
Go
All
on.
about the mods.
I'm excited.
Number 5, Dan Pyre Survivors.
Nice.
A PlayStation 5 exclusive where Dan battles hordes of enemies using weapons like beer bottle rockets and dirty jokes across stages like the Jose Canseco Executive Haunted Forest.
I'm so into this game. Oh my god, I fucking love it.
Oh my goodness.
Number 4, Chrono Kris. Travel across time and space as Kris fights against the evil Atari Lynx and tries to find the leak in the space-time continuum, also known as his upstairs bathroom.
Wow.
my God.
You should have ended with this one. No offense intended for anybody else who's coming after it, but boy,
That's a hard act.
coming out fucking swinging. Holy shit.
Wow. Number 3, Echo the Danfin.
Oh, no, never mind. I take it all back. I take back every nice thing I just fucking said. It's the worst thing I've ever heard.
The only way Dan's favorite game of all time could be made any better was if he himself was the star.
Just fucking swimming around, doing a fucking Jim Carrey dolphin impersonation from the first Ace Ventura.
Yes.
And I'm saying to dolphin, yeah.
Number 2, Mega Man Dazzo. Our titular hero must stop the evil robot masters from taking over, take on villains such as Insurance Man and the nefarious Dr. Atui.
These are good.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Creative.
I'm
Definite thought
impressed.
put into it. Yeah. 10 out of 10.
And number 1, Super SAG Brothers. Brothers in quotes, Dan and Kris are plumbers who don't wear ties and find themselves in a far-off land where they must battle against the villainous Tommy Bowserico. I'm sorry, Dan and Kris, but your console is in another fundraising platform. And then he says, love you guys. Congrats on 500 episodes. Thanks so much for all you do. And thank you, Chronodin. That was fucking hysterical.
Well done.
Dear God. I've said it a few times this episode, but this time I actually mean it. 10 out of 10, no notes.
No notes. Yeah. Fucking nailed it. Great job. All right, another written list comes to us from Rob Metzger. Listened to the episode today and heard Dan, as usual, call us a bunch of dicks and assholes.
Wow, Dan.
So I'm putting together my top 5 for a platform to be an asshole. You can quote this if you want. Top 5 NTEX Adventure Vision games. 5, Code Red. 4, Space Force. 3, Turtles. 2, Super Cobra. 1, Defender. Easiest fucking list ever because it had a total of 5 games. Oh, you're a monster. I love it. Oh, I love it so much.
Fucking brilliant.
My face hurts. Oh, God.
Oh, man.
All right.
I haven't laughed this much in fucking years, man.
This
Holy
is ridiculous.
shit. We're
All
really
right.
good at this, Chris. Shit. Whoa, we are fucking delightful.
All right, we've got 1, 2, 3. We've got 4 audio submissions from listeners who sent in some audio stuff. So, Evan, feel free to.
All right, I'm going to go with.
Let's end on Fergs.
Yeah, I'm going to go in length order. We're going to go with Duropig first.
Duroc Pig. All right, let's have it.
All right.
Howdy, y'all. Longtime listener and Patreon subscriber Duroc Pig here from Texas with an unusual top 5 for your 500th episode. Something I figured no one would even consider doing. So here are my top 5 pigs in video games. At number 5, Pigma Dengar from the Star Fox series. Not as well known as adversaries like Andros and Wolf O'Donnell, but Pigma's treacherous betrayal of the original Star Fox team is important to the franchise's lore and laid the path for Fox and James McCloud's story, so he comes in at number 5. At number 4, Robert Belmart from Barnyard Blast Swine of the Night on Nintendo DS. So many pig characters are relegated to being just enemies, from Tomba to Rocket Knight to Duke Nukem. But in this parody of the Castlevania games, we get a lead porcine protagonist, so he makes the list for me at number 4. Number 3 is Hamlet from The Illusion of Gaia, the noble pet pig who literally sacrifices himself by jumping into the fire to save Kara and Will after they're held captive by a starving tribe. His heroic effort by making himself barbecue puts him at the number 3 slot. Number 2 is Pig Ganon from the Zelda series. One of the most notorious villains in gaming history, he certainly deserves a spot on the list. Though in his most recent outings, we get the more popular and at times sexy Ganondorf variation. But I personally miss the days of his more classic porcine appearance from A Link to the Past and the NES games, something I wish we honestly saw a lot more of. And at number 1, the top spot goes to Paige from Beyond Good and Evil, one of my all-time favorite games, and one that many of us are still eagerly awaiting that often teased sequel. Uncle Paige is the grumpy but lovable sidekick and mentor to the main protagonist Jade, and a character I very much identify with, given his hefty stature and tinkering mechanics skills. And Paige is the character I have used as an avatar for my Xbox and PlayStation accounts for many, many years. And that's why he is my number 1 pig in video games. So thank you for listening to my silly, pointless top 5, and thank you guys for all the years of entertainment you provided for us. Stone Age Gamer and Waveback have been my go-to podcasts ever since my partner bought me a Genesis EverDrive for my birthday like 8 years ago. So I wanted to say we appreciate all your hard work and congratulations on 500 episodes.
Oh, thank you, Duroc Pig.
Fuck, man.
I was so happy, Hamlet. As soon as you started, I was like, oh, man, I hope Hamlet's on this list. I was so happy you mentioned Hamlet.
What's fucking wild to me, though, is that I can guarantee, I don't know this for a fact, I just know it to be true. We have never said, Chris, know what, neither you nor I nor anyone else that has ever been on this show has ever fucking used the word porcine, and it was just used twice.
That's very true.
I love that.
Oh, that was a great list. Paige at
Fantastic.
number 1 is just a rock solid pick. God, I wasn't even thinking of it. I wasn't even thinking of Paige. until as soon as you mentioned it, I was like, oh shit, that is a perfect number 1 pick. Because what a great character. I really should play through that game again sometime. I've been so scared to go back to it because after how much I have not liked everything I've seen to Beyond Good and Evil 2, I'm like afraid I'm going to go back to that game and not like it.
Maybe this game actually sucks.
I loved it when I played through it the first time. What a great list. Well done.
Done.
All right, just
no notes.
Just so we are aware, we have a solid 16 minutes of recording left.
Fuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
No.
You only get one 500th episode.
Yep.
Let's do it.
Chris,
4.5 hours is where I'm at currently.
Yeah.
Just in case anybody's wondering.
Bro, I'm almost up for a full 24 at this point. Let's just roll it
Chris
on.
B. Saturn. Chris
We'll
B.
take turns
Saturn
snapping.
coming at you.
Which one is this? This is Chris B?
Chris B.
Hello, gentlemen.
Okay, hold on a sec. Hold on. There's something attached to this one.
All right.
Okay, I can read this afterwards. We'll do the list first, and then I'll read this.
Okay.
Hello, gentlemen. Dean. I thought I would cover the much maligned Sega Saturn, as it was my first foray into the 32-bit era, and it brought me many great memories with friends. While it's looked back on fondly now by a lot of its fan base, it was undoubtedly overshadowed during its era, especially in the US. I don't know if we're supposed to give a short list or a blurb for each game, so I went with the latter, and I'm going to be sticking with the North American releases. My 5th place choice actually came with my system. Toys R Us was giving away games with Saturn purchases, or maybe the guy you handed your receipt and game voucher to in that weird electronic vault was just being cool, but I got a copy of Daytona USA for free. There was no multiplayer on my copy, and the frame rate sucked, but I didn't understand that stuff in 1995. All I understood was that it was an arcade game in my house. Yes, they released a championship edition later, but they altered the music and the controls. A lot of the people think it's the inferior version. Though it may not technically be one, there is something to be said about packing games. I kind of consider this one, and I think we all put an enormous amount of time into them, and as a result, they hold a special place for us. That being said, Daytona USA is no slouch as a racing game. Sitting in 4th place was one of the few games you could play over Sega Netlink with other people, and it worked flawlessly.
Wow.
Sega produced a special twin-stick controller for it based off the original arcade cabinet controls. The characters, which are mechas, have good variation, and none of them suffer any major weaknesses over the others in Versus mode. You can fight against a secret boss if you're fast enough beating the levels, and there are secret moves for some characters not listed in the manual. Everyone really owes it to themselves to play Virtual on Cyber Troopers if they get the chance, and you can still play it online today if you know how. Most people know the Saturn has some great fighters. Unfortunately, the majority of them never made it to the US. Of the few that did, there are 2 titles with quite a bit of reverence: X-Men Children of the Atom and Marvel Superheroes. The latter really shows the DNA of what would later become Marvel vs. Capcom, but the game was marred by longer loading times and the gem system was imperfect, and honestly the story mode was too easy. It's something of a toss-up, but I have to give it to X-Men Children of the Atom. It was the first time Marvel licensed out their characters to Capcom for a fighting game. The in-game voices feature the same actors from the animated series. It was a nearly arcade-perfect port released when the comic was incredibly popular. You can sink a lot of hours into this and it doesn't get old. It's vastly superior to its PlayStation counterpart and sits in 3rd place. So, what is iconic for Sega? Sonic or Shinobi? Or if you're just asking about the Saturn, Knights or Virtua Fighter? Well, there was one title made by a little developer called Team Andromeda from Sega. They actually had some predecessors to it, and the first 2 were rail shooters, and they're quite famous in their own right, but really their magnum opus was Panzer Dragoon Saga. You can ultimately say it's the best RPG on the system. It is full of FMVs that have aged poorly, and in general the game shows its age and somewhat the limitations of the Saturn, but the fact that this game has such clout and reverence in the community, really it speaks for itself. It is very expensive today, but there are many different ways you can play it. It is a masterpiece of a game. However, it is not the best game on the Saturn, therefore it sits at second place. The best game on the system is Guardian Heroes. It's the best game Treasure ever made.
So good.
It is a choose-your-own-adventure beat-em-up with 7 different endings. You get to fight, like, wizards, robots, gods, demons. You can punch a kid in the face. You can do all kinds of stuff.
What's the hate?
The story mode characters all play differently, but none are necessarily better than the others. You get to unlock story mode characters as you play through the game. There's an arena mode, which supports 6-player simultaneous mayhem. So if you have the multi-tap with 5 other buddies, you can all beat each other up in an arena, and you can unlock 45 different characters to choose from for arena mode. It did get a port later to Xbox Live, I believe on the Xbox 360. You can still buy it today. It's definitely worth it if you can't get to play it on the Saturn. Regardless, you should find a way to play this game, even if you don't have anyone to play it with. That's the definitive Sega Saturn Top 5 list.
Hello, Dan.
There you go.
No lies detected.
Yeah, good. Another big win
Solid
of a list
ass
right
list.
there.
Yeah.
I can still hear the fucking the X-Men Children of the Atom voice lines. Like if I think about it, I can hear them as if I'm standing in front of the fucking arcade machine right now.
Gene Splice.
Berserker Mirage. Berserker Mirage.
I don't think I would have been able to put if I was going to do any of the Capcom ones on a Saturn list for myself. There's no way I wouldn't have been able to do X-Men versus Street Fighter, because that was just like, that was the import. You had to do the switching with the cartridges to get that 4 meg cartridge working in there. But holy shit, that game was flawless. But
So fucking
nothing
good.
but respect on every single other thing on that list. Well done. Well done. All
I
right,
gotta
this
say,
one's got a little bit more. No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, everyone's done their homework so far. It's like really impressive. Like everyone that's talked about everything, like they really put a lot of work into it. So I appreciate that.
We demand
Thank
this
you.
level of perfection, Dean.
I mean, I
Well, I
tried
appreciate
really
it,
hard
Sebastian.
because I don't get on the show very much, so I wanted to make sure that I knew what I was talking about.
All right, so what we have here is an email that came along with this one from Kris. It says, I've attached my Sega Saturn Top 5 list for the 500th episode. I had some questions too, but my microphone has been taken from me, so I was going to just ask them here. If I get it back this evening, I'd do a Top 5 for another system, though I don't know if that's allowed or not. I hope you guys are dissecting our Top 5s because I want to know your thoughts. Yeah, there's really not much to dissect on yours. You kind of fucking nailed it.
Yeah, no, that's fucking great.
Slam dunk.
Great. Questions and comments. Dan, for a long time I considered the Super Nintendo the king of the 16-bit era. One day you suggested that the Game Boy Advance might have one of the best libraries of all time, and while that system is technically a part of the next generation, I've always considered it a 16-bit as well. I have gone back and forth comparing games in each genre for both systems, and I think I've finally come to the conclusion that the Game Boy Advance's library is superior to the Super NES's. Do you agree? Does anyone else have any thoughts on the matter?
Man, like it's such a hard question because I do like.
You can
I'm
start
tired
going game to game almost. at
Yeah,
that
like.
point.
Well, and I'm just like, I'm tired and I've been drinking, so like, I'm not at my most like
Prolific.
clear.
Take a
at
swing,
the
big
moment.
man. You got it. You got it, buddy.
But I think I would argue that yes, the Game Boy Advance is the better overall library, because what the Super Nintendo has is incredible. The Game Boy Advance has basically all of that, plus like other shit
in a portable form.
in a portable form. You know what I mean? Like, I think like
don't agree,
if I'm
personally.
I'm with Kris on that.
It's arguable, though.
It's for sure. It's arguable, right? I mean, I have never made it through Minish Cap, but A Link to the Past is one of the best games ever made. But I also would rather play A Link to the Past on Super Nintendo than on Game Boy Advance. Mario Advance 1, 2, and 3, and 4 are very cool, but I don't think they're better than playing them, even though they have more features because of the screen, the system limitations. I don't think they're better experiences on Game Boy Advance than they are on Super Nintendo. In fact, I would much rather play those games on Super Nintendo.
Can I pause you first, Kris? Can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
I love all of you and our listeners. We are 4 hours and 41 minutes into this on our recording. Can we do I think this is a good discussion point for next week. Honestly, truly, like, I think this deserves more than tired rapid fire.
That's fair. That's fair.
I do.
I think it's a very good conversation.
I think it's an outstanding question. Yeah.
It is a very good question. All right, so here's my question. Have you completed any of the Nintendo Power Super Power Club card challenges? Which were the most difficult? Any you attempted but failed? If you were going to create one for an NES, Game Boy, or Super NES game that doesn't exist, what games would you pick and what would the challenges be? No, I actually haven't. I wasn't the one with a Nintendo Power subscription as a kid. My neighbors did. My friends did. So I didn't really get to mess around with those cards all that often. And when I saw them, I tended to just look at the artwork more than the challenges that were on the cards, if I'm remembering this correctly, which I think I am. What would I make, though? Without really knowing what was there, it's hard for me to think of ones. But, I mean, I would have definitely made a Blaster Master one. I'm pretty sure there wasn't a Blaster Master one. So, yeah, I would have made a Blaster Master challenge. And the challenge would be... how fast can you fill your gun meter in Area 1? Off the top of my head, at 12:52 a.m., that's what I got for you. But that's another really good question. Thank you for that.
That's an excellent question.
Yeah. And the only other thing he's got in the email is, Dean, you know what you did.
Goddamn right, and I'm fucking not sorry for it either.
Thanks, guys. Here's to the next 500, Kris. Thank you, Kris, very, very much for your contribution. And
we will get to that. We will get to that question because that is an outstanding question.
Comparing Super NES and Game Boy Advance libraries, that's a hell of a thing. I'm gonna have to give that some serious thought. Thank you for that.
All right,
Evan. Who's next?
Scion Storm coming up. All right, and play.
Holy crap! Stone Age Gamer made it to episode 500. How freaking cool is that? Happy birthday, Kris, Dan, Evan, and everybody else who makes the show possible. Is it happy birthday or happy anniversary? Oh, geez, I don't even know. I didn't even give it that much thought. 500 episodes. Imagine if you were 500 years old. Oh, wow. Anyway, longtime listener Drew, also known as Scion Storm on the Discord and the Twitters and stuff. And yeah, man, I've been listening to you guys since episode 100-ish, I think. And I just never really thought about what it would be like when you guys finally reached 500. I mean, did you ever think about that? And do you think you can make 500 more of these? Like, oh God, I think you guys can, and I think you will.
I'm tired now.
Not many podcasts can do that, but somehow you guys keep reinventing yourselves, and it's an absolute joy to hear you week after week. And I am very much looking forward to the next 500 episodes. What do they give people for their 500th anniversary? Usually get like a ruby, a diamond, a piece of paper or something, depending on your wedding anniversary. Nobody's ever made it to 500 years married, right?
Go do cocaine.
Anyway. So you got this top 5 thing that you're doing. And I guess being one of the few TurboGrafx residents around these parts, I figured I'd do my top 5 TurboGrafx games. I'll try to make this quick because I know there's a strict time limit. So in no particular order, but probably some sort of an order here.
Very strict.
Number 5, Blazing Lasers. Just one of the best shooters ever made. And to have it on TurboGrafx is just wonderful, right? TurboGrafx is known as a shmup system. Blazing Lasers, I think, really just nails the formula down better than most games do. Number 4, I'm going to go with Bonk's Revenge. Yeah, I know it's the sequel, and I think there's an argument to be made that Bonk's Adventure is a better game, but this was the one that I grew up with, and this is the one I love the most, and it's the one I had the most fun with. Bonk is a very interesting character, and he gets very angry if he eats too much meat, which I think is something that happens with most Americans. Anyway, number 3, Ninja Spirit. What an excellent arcade port of a very challenging game. I used to love this game, and I don't think I ever made it past stage 3, but just what an absolute gem of a platformer with some really interesting twists and turns going on as far as the characters go. Get doubles and triples of your own character, slashing, throwing swords around and knives and, shurikens and all kinds of crazy stuff like that. And the graphics were great, and the gameplay was tight and it was super challenging. And I think I played it on hard mode most of the time and didn't realize it because I'm a stupid idiot. Number 2, Legendary Axe 2. Look, this game wasn't even supposed to be a Legendary Axe game, but here we are, and it was, and I loved it. And this is the one that I had when I was growing up, so that makes me love it even more. I have some really fond memories of this game, and I thought the graphics were so cool when the dude was standing there with the sword above his head, and you could see his rib cage because he's malnourished. I thought that was great. But good gameplay. I think very good music. I thought the graphics were great for the time. And even though it had nothing to do with the original game, this is still one of my favorites. But I got to go with Bloody Wolf as my number 1. Something about Bloody Wolf, I don't know what it is. Maybe the fact that I could choose one of 2 different characters, and ultimately, halfway through the game, you end up playing as the other one anyway. Or maybe there's a story, which on the surface seemed very thin, but actually became a little bit more in-depth as you went along. Gameplay is fun, and even though it's a flawed game with slowdown and just glitches galore, just something about that game just made me want to play it over and over and over again. And I tell you, no matter when I break out my TurboGrafx nowadays, Bloody Wolf is a game that goes in that system, and I play it, and sometimes I even sit down and I beat it because it's a very forgiving game and you can start over with as many continues as you want to. Well, I'm running out of time, so I'm going to stop there. But again, I just want to congratulate you guys on reaching your 500th episode. And I really hope that I get to hear you guys together as a podcast for another 500 more. You guys make my commute to work so much more enjoyable than it would be otherwise. And trust me, I've got a long commute. So I need those 3-hour episodes. Just inject them into my veins, please. Anyway,
we got an episode.
Thank you so much for everything you guys do. And if I could borrow a phrase from one of my favorite podcast hosts, keep playing games.
Do you see what he did? I mean, he stole your line.
It felt a little cheap there at the end. That was a little cheap.
The steal line from a very famous podcaster, Puzzle and Dragons. All right. Anything to say? Or are we finishing up with Ferg?
I mean, that was a very sweet message. Dan's probably the one to talk more about TurboGrafx than I am. So
I am. If we took another 5 hours, and I really want this to get to a 5-hour podcast for episode 500,
it has to. We have to get there.
It has
We're
to.
10 minutes away.
In 16 minutes, we will have officially a 5-hour recording.
Holy fuck, that's amazing. If you had given me another 5 hours, I don't think I would have picked Bloody Wolf as somebody's not. I don't disagree necessarily. It's just such an out of left field pick when you think about the TurboGrafx. Like, I that's a wild pick. I fully support it. The lack of Splatterhouse makes me a little bit sad. I'm not gonna lie.
Felt like that should be a must.
Lords of Thunder. Lords of Thunder.
Like, oh man, it's such a good system. It's such an underloved system, but okay.
With unique games, they weren't on other platforms. So
no, they really weren't.
One to do a top 5 list on.
It's very cool. Just
a general appreciation for all of the kind words. And I mean,
yes,
I'm not stopping anytime soon. I can't say that we're going to get to another 500, but I can't imagine not getting to another 500.
I mean, I'm done. I kind of had enough.
I mean, Dan and I were talking earlier. He didn't want to say it, but he'll just, he'll say, no, he's out. This is it. This is his final episode. Appreciate you.
Moving back to paper cuts. I understand.
That's right. No, where the money is,
Yeah. The big bucks.
Comic books.
Nailed it.
That's where the money is. All right, well, let's get to our last one. Let's see what Ferg has to say.
Ferg it up.
All right.
Fergalicious.
Did you give like a limit? Like when you asked for...
I think I said to keep it around 5 to 7 minutes if possible,
okay.
But, say what you got to say.
Okay.
Hello, Dan and Kris and all the Stone Age gamers out there in podcast land. My name is Ferg. I was asked to do a top 5 of the Atari 2600 in honor of the 500th episode of Stone Age Gamer, which is a great achievement. Just some quick background. I got the 2600 when I was 11. It was my first system because I wanted to play Space Invaders at home. The 2600 has a lot of good arcade ports, many passable arcade ports. I did play a lot of them when I was a kid. I play a lot of them now, including some incredible homebrews that are still coming out for this damn system. But I can play those exact arcade games in multiple places, so that's why I did not include any in this list. My list is mostly sentimental favorites, but I think that might be how everybody picks their lists. All right, number 5. Miniature golf. To sum up miniature golf, use a block to hit your block into another block while avoiding the bouncing block. I'm not kidding. It's very, very blocky. It's a little on the colorful side, not too many colors, but there's just something about this game that makes me want to get better at it. Shooting a hole-in-one in miniature golf is one of my life's pleasures. I know, I need new hobbies. Number 4, Superman. Superman is the noisiest damn game you will ever play. My wife has to leave the room whenever I fire it up. The map makes absolutely no linear sense, and you can get lost for a moment or two. That's kind of a theme here. There is a lot of satisfaction in flying around Metropolis, which is in my home state of Delaware. Look it up. Picking up a bad guy and putting him right into jail without a trial. Plus, I believe it's the first licensed video game ever. Number 3 is Pitfall 2. Pitfall was a great game, but Pitfall 2 really amped it up in my opinion. Again, there's that sense of getting lost in the game because it is a huge game and there's not a lot of different things in the game, but there's just enough that will make you keep coming back, and you really can't die in this game either. It looks great too. Probably the best looking game out of my list because it came out in 1984, 5 or 6 years after some of these games came out. Number 2 is Kaboom. Kaboom is I guess what kids would now call a Twitch game. You're controlling the flattest buckets of water you've ever seen, and you have to catch bombs that a guy throws at you. Yeah, it sounds weird, but this game is frenetic. It is really excellent looking. It's 2K. You've sent a text today that was bigger than 2K. It's really a lot of fun, and I think I like it because it's one of the games that I'm actually pretty good at. Number one, of course, if you know me for 5 minutes, is Adventure. Adventure, again, is pretty blocky. There's dragons in it, but people say they look like ducks or even seahorses. You have to find a chalice somewhere in the kingdom and bring it back to your home yellow castle, gold castle, whatever the hell it is. And again, the map doesn't make any sense because the core of this game was given to another programmer and he created Superman out of it. But I don't know. There's just, you get lost in the game because of the weird map, and there's just something about this game that keeps me coming back. Every time I fire up the 2600 nowadays, I play this game. And you gotta play game 3 where everything is random and sometimes you can't win. That's how random it is. So that was my list. I just wanted to do a short list because I want to talk about Dan and Kris. I do a podcast myself, obviously about 2600 games. That's how I met Kris, through the podcast. He sent me some feedback on some of the games. We ended up meeting at, was it Too Many Games, I think, one year in Philadelphia. Yep. And I never met him before. We just, conversed a couple times online. And I walked up to him and told him who I was, and he gave me a giant hug, and I was a little stranger danger, but after the initial shock wore off, I was like, Kris gives good hugs. He does. Aww. I met Dan later on when I invited myself to, I asked if I could come to the Pete-a-thon. Those guys, all those guys are awesome. Everybody on Geekade is terrific. I'm very happy and thankful to count them among my friends. But for Dan and Kris, They make me laugh every week without fail. I listen at work. I'm at work when the show comes out at like 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning, and I get to listen to it right away. I should get on the other tier so I could listen to it earlier, but it wouldn't be the same, I don't think, because Friday is the end of the week, and it's been a hard week, and Kris and Dan kind of take the edge off of that. I mean, even listening to the problems that they share, and that's the other thing. A lot of people will say when listening to video game podcasts, and I hate that, get to the point. You know, we don't want to hear about your life, but I do. If I like you as a person, then I want to hear about what's happening to you, how you're doing. And Kris and Dan definitely share that. And they make it funny. They don't make it like sad that, oh, you poor bastards. It's hilarious. They are always positive, I think, for the most part, except when it comes to Tommy Tellerico. But Stone Age Gamer is a very important part of my week. I don't think I would be playing current games if it wasn't for Stone Age Gamer. A lot of the games that they talk about, I have gotten a Switch, actually, from my listeners, and most of the games I have are ones that they've recommended, and I enjoy them, so I guess we're simpatico in that way. But Dan and Kris, congratulations on 500 episodes. I hope there are 500 more. If not, I will start back at the beginning and go through them again, because I just love listening to you guys, and you're my friends, and I'm glad that you're my friends, and I love you.
Oh, we love you too, Ferg.
So here's
I find it interesting. I'm sorry. I find it interesting that Ferg mentioned the first time he met Kris, Kris gave Ferg a hug. And the first time Ferg and I met in person, Ferg gave me a special hug. And I find that odd that he left that out.
I mean, you know. So I took all 4 of those audio recordings and threw them into VLC Media Player just so I can see how long they were, so I can put them in order. Yeah. And it says the title, says duration, and for some reason a column labeled author also showed up. Now the first 3 had no author. They were blank. Ferg's has an author, and the author is Happy Asshole. I didn't do that. I just thought that should be shared.
It's fucking wild to me. That was the last one, right, Evan?
Yes. That's
it's fucking wild to me, man. Like, just sitting here, because Kris, you and I, like, we've said it 100 times on this podcast over the years, a fucking decade, whatever the fuck it's been. At this point of, like, even if nobody listened, we would just do this every week because we just enjoy the format and talking to each other and all of that shit. But hearing that, like, I know we interact with people and we get that positive feedback, but hearing those messages and that sort of shit, like, I'm sitting here getting fucking emotional. You know what I mean? It's fucking wild, man. To know that we bring some small amount of small amount. Who am I kidding? A gigantic amount of joy to people's lives every week just by us doing this fucking silly show that we would do. Regardless, it's so fucking touching and humbling, and it's just. It's fucking awesome to hear that from all of you. And I know for me, like, I fucking love you guys. I don't interact nearly as much on the Discord as Kris does because my life is just way more fucking chaotic than Kris's is.
A lot more dogs.
There's a lot more dogs. It's a fucking lot. But I love you guys, and that all of that just fucking means the world to me, man.
Yeah, same here.
Ditto.
Ditto. I mean, look, I love doing this show. I look forward to it every week. I love doing podcasting because I'm not very good at being social. So this is a way for me to keep in touch with people. In fact, I started the movie podcast specifically to stay in touch with my friends who live near me. They're closer to me than these chuckleheads do. Like, I just, it's a huge part of my life. But hearing from I don't want to necessarily say strangers. I know we've met a lot of these people by now, or at least I know I have. But just people that I don't know from any other place in my life than this podcast, and hearing that we've had, just from sharing our lives, positive influence on their lives is kind of astounding. Ferg in particular, I fell in love with his podcast. Like I just loved it to tears. And his podcast was such an inspiration for Waveback. That show exists because of the Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast. I modeled it after him, starting doing it as a solo show, just because it was just something I wanted to do. And I love that we've met these people. I love all the nice things that we've done together. I loved our Fast and Furious watching sessions we did last year through the Discord. The daily Discord is such a big part of my life, and a lot of my job is done on Discord and communicating through Discord. So having this fun, almost work adjacent thing that's like just kind of there in my work day is just such a joy to me. Like Dan said, we'd be doing this anyway. Like, obviously, Dean gets just about the biggest thanks in the world, because I don't think I would have even known to do this without him. Geekade was his brainchild back when it was Geek Life, and he contacted me and said, I want to do a video game podcast, and and called it Stone Age Gamer. And that led to my fucking career right now. The accidental stealing of Stone Age Gamer's name changed my life forever. And
how did you thank him, Kris? You kicked him off
right
the
show. Fuck off the show.
Get out, you prick.
So, yeah, I can't say anything better than get out, you prick. That's about as good as it gets. No, I mean, to everybody who listens to the show, to everybody who sent us messages today for this 500th episode, which is, I mean, kind of a crazy thing that even exists, that we've made it to 500 episodes. Because I know there's podcasts that I listen to that haven't made it to the 500 episode mark. Or that ended before they made it to the 500 episode mark. And that's always made me sad. Just a big hearty thanks to everyone involved. Mike, you were a part of the show. You were a co-host on the show for a long time. We met at the fucking comic book shop, just like me and Dean. And you've become one of my best friends ever. And I love having you here. I love that we talk as often as we do. I wish I could make time to talk to you more and see you more, but life is what it is. Dean, it's just great to hear your voice again. Like, you used to be such a big part of all this stuff, and obviously life happens, but you're sorely missed around here. Evan, I mean, one of the reasons this week's episode exists is so that I have an excuse to talk to you every week, not every week anymore, unfortunately, because again, life happens, but you're our editor, and we chat before the show, and when you're there, or we'll chat with Angie before the show, but
but we really don't want to.
No.
We love Angie, but like the whole point is I need something so that I can stay in touch with you. I need to be able to talk to you, because you're another one of my favorite people on the planet. And Dan,
fuck you.
Yeah. I love you too.
I met this guy at the Hamilton Mall. So I was working at what was it?
Suncoast Video.
Yeah, I was working at Suncoast. This was after GameStop bought Funko Land, and they ruined my job. They just completely fucking ruined that company, right in the garbage. And so I then was like, all right, well, what else do I like? I like movies. Why don't I go try and get a job at Suncoast in the Hamilton Mall? So I got a job at Suncoast Movies. And this girl, Sharon, would come in, and she was like, you should come work with me at the poster place, Prince Plus. okay, well, I'm not in love with this job. And she eventually convinced me, and that's where Dan worked. And I immediately figured he was my arch nemesis. They just kind of had this ridiculously stupid arch nemesis thing going on. So we did that for a while, and we worked at Prince Plus together, and we got along thick as thieves. And we eventually moved on to greener pastures at Toys R Us and Game Crazy and all that business. And then he moved. I think you were in Florida, or I think you were Florida
first. Yeah,
went Florida first. And it was when we had kind of drifted apart, right? Because he was in fucking Florida. And Dean,
yeah, I drifted apart from everybody.
Dean started this website and wanted to do the video game podcast. And like, I want to say after the first episode, I was like, I have someone I want to bring on to this show.
The third episode.
You're probably right. It's probably the third episode, but it was really early on. I was like, I have somebody I want to be a part of this. And I called up Dan, and that was that. And the show's been changing and evolving a lot over the years. When we started it, I really wanted it to be like Nintendo World Report. Radio Free Nintendo on Nintendo World Report was this just enormous inspiration for me. I loved that podcast, and it had 4 people. So I was like, I want that. I want to make that be our thing. But as time moved on, it seemed like it made the most sense for it to just be me and Dan. And that's kind of where we landed. Not that I don't miss you guys. Tiff was a co-host, and we've had lots of guests and done lots of weird things. And I was very angry at Nintendo when they announced the Switch. And I
still say we were spot on.
Spot on. Yeah.
Yeah. No, nailed it.
Boy, that's one to go back to and listen to. You want to hear how wrong I was about the effects of 1-2 Switch. I was very, very adamant about that. And our trivia episodes are a blast, and they're so hard for me to write, but I got to continue to make myself do it. And it's just the biggest of all possible thanks to everybody involved. This is a great part of my life that I'm really proud of. And there's always going to be a piece of me that's like a little miffed that we aren't more successful. But honestly, there's no more success than we need than what we have. Like, this is a great community that we've built here, and I'm just eternally grateful to everyone who wants to listen to me talk about video games, because it's literally all I've ever wanted to do with my life is talk about video games. Well, that's all I got.
It has been a spectacular ride over these last 497 episodes or so that I've been a part of. It's not. We're going to do this again.
You must be at 500. With specials, you've got to be at 500 by now.
Maybe, but no, because I've been sick and I've missed a couple here and there. I don't know. I'm probably still a couple weeks away from 500 for me personally. But after I had moved to Florida and we hadn't talked for apart from Facebook, right? Because Facebook was like the fucking great equalizer at that time. So, but like physical communication, we probably hadn't talked for like 5-6 years at that point. And then it wasn't until I moved, I was in Florida for 6 years, and then I had moved to Texas. It was the second year I was in Texas. So it was 8 years since I had left New Jersey, because I remember sitting in my apartment in Corpus Christi, Texas on my couch. And you were like, "Yeah, like fucking come do this podcast." It's, my buddy Dean and Mike. I think you were there too, and we were like, "Let's fucking talk about who's better, Konami or Capcom." And I was like, "I have fucking thoughts. Let me get on here."
I have a way different answer now.
Way different answer
for
now.
real.
Years later,
now it's Squeenix, which is weird, but it's just been this absurd fucking journey. I love you. Like I said, I love you guys. I love this show. It's therapy for us. I'm happy that it's helpful for other people. Do we have another 500? I don't know. How long does it take us to get to 500? Like another 10 years?
It's the first episode was April 28th, 2014, according to iTunes. So we're
All right,
in
so-
our 10th year. In April, it'll be our 10-year anniversary.
All right.
Holy
Well, in
shit.
April we're going to do a 10-hour episode. So fucking
I'm in.
strap in. Strap in, boys and girls.
Oh,
Story time with Dan and Kris.
Don't worry, we're just not going to edit that one. We're just going to put it up raw.
a lot of dead air. Not speaking for 10 hours straight. Someone's going to take a nap.
Dozing.
No shit.
I am
Really?
Oh, man.
certain Dan and I could do it.
If anybody
no,
can, it's you
100%.
two.
100. Yeah. The fact that we're over 5 hours recording now, and there are 5 of us, is not surprising because I guarantee you, Kris and I could have done this for 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Guaranteed.
And it wasn't my plan to do a 5-hour episode. It really wasn't.
It wasn't mine either, but I'm kind of happy about it. Like,
I'm
I
kinda
got
happy
nothing
that
to
it
do
turned
until
out that way.
Monday. There's no football this weekend. We already talked about the lack of the football this weekend. So, like, what the fuck? I got to get up at 8. It's fine. It's in 6 hours by the time I get to bed. It's fine. That's enough.
Ange and I have a
Well, do
show
our
tomorrow.
guests have anything to say?
Well, I wanted to thank you guys for doing this. I look forward to this every Friday. Work sucks, as Ferg said before. And Friday morning, once I start getting ready for work, throw it on, listen to it throughout the day. I am constantly messaging Kris about like shit that was said, and he's like, "Oh yeah, we did say that," because remembering from a week prior.
Yeah, that's hard.
Yeah. But thank you guys for doing this still.
Thank you
welcome.
for listening. A listener. Is that who you're talking to every week? You're talking to Mike? Thank you.
Hello.
Dean, say something nice about it.
Is Dean still awake?
Yeah.
There
No,
it is.
I wanted to make sure like everyone was done. No, yeah.
Polishing his vest.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was doing. Yeah, no, it's
Not what you call it.
exactly. Yeah, I'm
How
just
does one
stroking it.
polish
Scooping out his bread.
bread scoopers?
Oh, boy,
I stand by it.
let's not
Bread
get into
Scoopers United.
I gotta go to bed.
No, you don't.
Yes,
Shut
I
up.
do.
What you got to do?
Let
your
Dean
back
talk.
hurts. You're not doing anything tomorrow. You got a shitty back. You're just going to lay in bed.
Dean,
We'll just go to bed. We'll just go to bed. It's
Dean?
fine. We'll go to bed. We'll go to bed. No, thank you guys. Yeah, it was a crazy ride. It was a fucking insane idea that I definitely bit off way more than I could chew, and I think any of us thought was possible, and just grew into what it is. And I'm really proud of what it's become, and I'm proud of you guys. I did not know where this was going to go at any time, but like all the cons we've been to, like the people we've met, like the memories we've made, that's all incredible stuff and super important to like my life and everything. So thank you guys, and who knows, maybe return is in order sooner or later.
oh boy, that sounds like a threat.
Tease. The sexy tease. I like it.
Threaten me with a good time. All right. Evan,
All right,
do you have
Evan.
anything to...
Your
Anything
turn.
to add?
Platitudes.
I am here every week listening to you guys, week in, week out. And you know what? For the amount of fucking bullshit that I give you guys, I wouldn't have it any other way. I find you guys stupidly entertaining, and I have actually listened to every episode.
Oh wow.
Like I have. Editing this, it's for the shit that we put on recording, there's as much entertainment that I cut out because it's just listening to my two friends just whether wax philosophical, rant ridiculously, it's just listening to like two great human beings, share what they know with each other. So I'm proud to be a part of it.
Aw, that was good.
Yay!
Yay. You know,
Love all around.
What's funny is I know what your next big thing is coming up, and if you do it once, if you do it every week, you have another 600 episodes. I'm just saying that out loud.
Once a month.
God.
Once a month.
Oh,
We've got
I'm saying you could do it
about,
every week.
We could dedicate an entire other show to it. No question.
Holy moly.
All right. Well, that's it. It's going to wrap it up.
That's it, Chris.
That is our show. Thank you, everybody, for listening, for helping us reach 500 episodes. Join us next time for the first installment of the SAG Cartoon Express. For our very first entry, we're going to be doing this randomly going forward. We'll be picking a random cartoon to watch. But for our very first episode, I figured there was no better place to start than the Bubsy pilot, which you can find on YouTube if you want to watch along with us for some goddamn reason. Dan and I will be watching the Bubsy pilot episode and breaking it down with our full critique. This is what's going to be replacing, I think we said this on the show before, but this is what's going to be replacing the starter kits now that that's over, and for the foreseeable future, because as Evan said, we could do it for another 600 episodes if we wanted.
I'm sorry.
There's so many cartoons.
I apologize. That is completely incorrect. Oof. You could do it for another 598 episodes. I'm sorry.
We got to find 2 more.
Well, he didn't do any of the Saturday arcade ones, so that's not even included.
Oh, wow. All right. Good times. Yeah, I have to organize the Saturday Supercade ones so that we can fit them into the list. But once I do, then those will be filtered into the randos. But we're starting with Bubsy, with Rob Paulson voicing Bubsy, which is crazy to think about. It should be fun. So I'm looking forward to it.
I'm excited.
You know what? I should probably get around to playing Jersey Devil one of these days, too.
Yeah, we've pushed that back like 2 months, I think, at this point.
Yeah, I still haven't touched it because I'm a bastard. Anyway.
Bad person.
We're on most social media platforms, and if you want to get in touch with us, we aren't very difficult to find. All it takes is a quick look at our show notes, and you'll see links to our social media accounts, as well as all manner of other fun stuff, like a link to our namesake, StoneAgeGamer.com, and more useful links than you can shake a joystick at. If you'd like to get early access to this show's episodes, as well as a bevy of other shows on the Geekade Podcast Network, check out our Patreon, also linked to in the show notes. It helps keep this show running week after week, and all our patrons are loved and appreciated. This show's theme song, Squared Roots, was written and then bastardized by me, but was written by Banjo Guy Ali. You can learn all about his wonderful music and more by following a link to his YouTube channel, also in the show notes. And if you want a copy of Squazooed Roots, you can just go ahead and reach out to me and I'll send you one and apologize in the future. And finally, as always, we'd like to thank our intrepid editor, Evan, for making the show listenable for all you folks. And we'd like to thank all you folks for listening in the first place. And that is it, everybody. Thank you to our esteemed guests, Evan, Mike, and Dean. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Pennsylvania.
On behalf of Dan, Mike, Dean, Evan, Angie, Tiff, everybody at Geekade, and myself, keep playing games. It's now time for the password for the giveaway. If you would like to enter to win one of 5 $100 gift cards to StoneAgeGamer.com, the password is bidet. B-I-D-E-T. Bidet.